Nevia. On the morning of our mating ceremony, the entire Fireblood pack buzzed with excitement, especially me. I had been dreaming and waiting for this moment for a year, but 4 hours before the ceremony, Kai suddenly cancelled it. The reason? Claire. His angelic face, innocent eyes, and sweet Omega crush, who faked an injury during training. The news didn't even come from him. I found out through a pack group chat, where Claire's story spread like wildfire. I'm so sorry, everyone, but I don't think I can make it to the ceremony. I injured my leg pretty badly today in training. Alpha Kai is with me, making sure I'm okay. Claire flooded the group chat with pictures, attempting to gather sympathy. There was even one where she was lying on a Shattered Dreams stretcher, while Kai hovered beside her with a look of concern on his face. I gripped my phone so hard it almost cracked. This had to be a joke, right? That concern was supposed to be for me. Kai couldn't just cancel the ceremony we had planned for a year, and just for Claire faking a damn injury. I was fuming, especially when my mind kept telling me I couldn't win over Claire. I was always the second best. Suddenly, my phone vibrated, and it was a message from Kai. Nevia, something's come up. Claire's hurt. I can't go through the ceremony now. We'll have to reschedule it. Don't wait up for me. I blinked at the screen, and my chest tightened as anger rose. Kai didn't even bother to call and just sent a text as if it was not a big deal. We had been together for 5 years. 5 years of loyalty and being his rock despite having people talk behind Shattered Dreams my back. And now this. I didn't respond. What should I say? My fingers trembled. I wanted to scream at him for choosing her again, but instead I swallowed my rage and just tossed the phone to the bed. I paced around the room, hoping to clear my head and calm my nerves. Kai and I had built a life together here in this lavish apartment he owned, but lately, I felt like I was living in his shadow and left alone almost all the time. A knock on the door stirred my thoughts. Nana Lolita, one of the pack's elders, stood there with her weathered face filled with sympathy. I heard what happened, child, she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. You deserve better than this. I bit my lip to keep from crying. Nanal always knew, because she was sharp, that I Shattered Dreams couldn't hide my pain from her. I thought today would be different. I thought he'd finally choose me over her, I muttered as I sank into chair. Nana's eyes darkened. Kai is a fool because he can't see what he's losing, but I know that Claire isn't as innocent as she seems. I stared at her with my mind racing. Everyone in the pack adored Claire, the sweet Omega who always smiled, demure, and had always had an eye for Kai. But Nana, aside from me, had never trusted her. That injury, it's a fake. Convenient timing, don't you think? My heart raced, knowing that it was not only me who thought of this. You think she did this on purpose? Nana scoffed. Shattered Dreams, oh child. Of course she did. She's been playing this game for years, pulling Kai closer every chance she gets. You think she's helpless, but I see right through her. I clenched my fists. Then, how come Kai doesn't? That idiot is blinded because he had a crush on her. But you know, so you be strong in facing it. I nodded, even if my stomach churned. I didn't want to be strong. I wanted Kai to comfort me and make it up to me. I'm sure you'll think of something. I know you are strong and wise, Nana said. Then, she bid farewell after giving me a comforting hug. My phone vibrated again, and I jolted from my thoughts. It's Ivar, my childhood friend, and the beta of our pack. Nevia, I heard the news. Don't be so Shattered Dreams disappointed. Kai had to do this as an alpha. He needed to ensure the safety of every member. Yeah, right. I yelled and didn't bother to reply to him. 2 minutes later, the group chat buzzed again. Claire had sent some more pictures. It was Kai alone with her, spoon-feeding her, checking her temperature, and her bondage as if she were his sick wife. Guys, I am sorry for any trouble, especially to Nevia and Kai. I didn't mean to ruin the most important day in your life. Kai, thank you for being the best alpha I could ever have. You always made me feel like the number one. Most of the group chat members liked and sent heart emojis. Some were even bold in saying they looked like a couple, or they could have been a good pair if the moon goddess allowed it. Claire. It was always Claire that Shattered Dreams everyone favored. Tears fell from my eyes. I felt like I had waited 5 years to realize a mistake. It was time to correct it and choose myself. Call me. I sent a message to Kai. I knew he wouldn't call if I wouldn't ask him. I sat and waited for a call or even just a response. 30 minutes had passed and still nothing. I was about to stand when my phone suddenly rang. Anything happened, Nevia? Kai said, a little irritated. Is that all what you have to say? I retorted, hurt when I sensed his irritation. Sorry. I couldn't think clearly. Claire got hurt. I needed to ensure she would be okay. Right, as expected from Alpha Kai. What's that supposed to mean? Shattered dreams, it means we're over. I ended the call, not giving him the chance to reply. A heart divided Kai. After Nivea hung up on me, the room felt suffocating. She had never done this to me before, and I went speechless. I dropped the phone onto my desk and sighed as I leaned on the chair. Her words had cut deeper than I wanted to admit. After all these years together, how had it come to this? But what else could I have done? Claire got hurt during training, and as an alpha, I had to take care of her. The pack always came first. That was the responsibility I bore when I took the title. I thought Nivea, of all people, understood this because she was my mate and soon to be Luna. I sighed and took my phone. The group chat had a bunch of messages, and I hadn't even been able to check it. When I opened it, all the messages were from Claire. She had been updating the group on her injury. A heart divided. My jaw tightened at the pictures she sent because they focused on her and me. I almost hated the one where she was lying on a stretcher, and I stood there all concerned and worried. I ran a hand through my hair. Everything seemed out of hand, but it wasn't my fault. Claire needed me, and I couldn't just abandon her because of the ceremony. Nivea should understand how important safety is to the pack. Still, the guilt gnawed at me. I cancelled our mating ceremony for Claire, and now Nivea was furious. Maybe I could have handled it better. I should have called her first and asked permission to cancel. Or maybe had explained better and not just messaged her as if the mating ceremony meant nothing. But what was done, and I had to deal with the fallout. A knock on the door pulled me from my thoughts. "Come in," I called out. A heart divided Ivar stepped into the room with his usual calm expression. He closed the door, sat across from me, and watched me. If there was anyone I could count on to help me make sense of this mess, it was him. "Kai, I heard what happened," he said with a low voice. I sighed. "Yeah, Nivea's pissed." Ivar raised an eyebrow while leaning back in his seat. "Pissed at you for doing your job." His words made me run a hand down my face. "I cancelled the mating ceremony, Ivar. She has every right to be upset." He shook his head, unbelieving of Nivea's reaction. "She might be upset, but you did what you had to do. Claire was hurt. You Thea heart divided. Alpha, your first responsibility is to the pack, including ensuring every member is safe, especially when they're injured. I know that. But Nivea, she doesn't see it that way. She thinks I'm choosing Claire over her." Ivar's expression softened. "Kai, you didn't choose Claire over Nivea. You chose the pack over everything. That's what being alpha means. Nivea knows that deep down, even if she's angry right now." I clenched my fists as frustration bubbled inside me. "I know she does, but it feels like I'm losing her. I've been so focused on the pack lately, on Claire, that I didn't even have the time for her. You not neglecting her, Kai. You've got responsibilities that most people will never understand. Nivea's upset, sure, but she'll come around. You've always a heart divided been there for her, and she knows that." I didn't respond and just stared at the window. A part of me knew Ivar was right. Nivea had always stood by me, but lately things felt different. I felt like we had grown distant from each other. Ivar must have sensed my inner turmoil because he continued, "You doing the right thing, Kai. Claire's part of the pack, and as alpha, you have to take care of her. Nivea will understand once she has calmed down." I looked at him, still doubting. "You really think so?" "I'm sure of that. Don't stress over it, it's nothing. Nivea's hurt right now, but she'll realize you were just doing your job," Ivar said confidently. I nodded. I had been so caught up in my guilt and frustration that doubt started blinding me of what was going to happen with my relationship. I was doing the right heart divided thing and couldn't be in two places. What I did for Claire is what all alpha would do. I don't want to lose Nivea," I whispered. "You won't. Nivea loves you. That's why this is hitting her so hard. But she 11 come around. You've been together so long to be ruined by just a simple injury." I let out a long breath, feeling some of the tension in my chest loosen. Ivar was right. "Thanks, Ivar. I needed to hear that." He smiled with eyes full of glint. "Anytime. That's what I'm here for." I stood up from my chair, feeling a little lighter than before. The conversation with Ivar had helped, but I still had a lot of work to do to repair the damage between Nivea and me. But at least now, I didn't feel like I was drowning in guilt. I'll talk to her later. Maybe by that time, she had calmed down. A heart divided, that's a good idea. Nivea has a soft spot for you, so use that to your advantage. We walked to the door together, and I felt more prepared to face whatever came next. Ivar clapped me on the shoulder. "You've got this, Kai. Just don't forget that you're not alone in this." "Thanks, Ivar." When Ivar left, the weight on my shoulder had lifted, But now, I had to find a way to make things right with Nevia. I went to the apartment Nevia and I shared. When I opened the door, I called her and she didn't respond. I looked for her everywhere and suddenly, instincts urged me to check the closet. Nevia's clothes were all gone. She had left me and I sank to the floor. Choosing myself Nevia, I never thought packing my stuff could be this hard. Every item I shoved into my suitcase felt like tearing pieces of my life with Kai. The life I had imagined would last forever. I bit back tears when I stared at the empty closet. I couldn't believe this was happening. How had we come to this? We were supposed to be together for life. But instead, here I was, about to leave. I wiped my tears. Now was not the moment to be weak. I was worth more than this. My phone vibrated and it was Ivar. He seemed unfinished with his lecture. Nevia, please don't make any rash decisions. I'm sure Kai will fix this. He is just a little busy. Give him time to make it up to you. I scoffed and rolled my eyes, choosing myself 43. Fix this. How could he? Where was he? He cancelled without thinking twice. He didn't even think of me. And I have to understand him, I hissed and ignored Ivar. I shoved the last shirt into the suitcase, trying to forget about the supposed mating ceremony. I had dreamt of walking down the aisle with the entire pack watching. But today, when it was supposed to happen, Kai's eyes went to Claire, who faked another injury. I couldn't count how many times she had done it and how blind Kai was about this. Damn them. I zipped the suitcase, grabbed my luggage and went out. I never told anyone, not even Nana Lolita, who loves me a lot. The Uber I booked was already outside waiting. I rushed to stuff my things inside the car's trunk and went inside, instructing the driver to leave. I stared out the window with a heavy heart as each passing street reminded me of the life I left behind. I had choosing myself fought for so long, but now I was done. I was taking back control, even if it hurt. When I arrived at my old apartment, I stared at it before going in. I had lived here less than a year and it felt like home, comforting but painful. I wished to become the old me, full of hope and love for Kai. I dragged my suitcase and its weight felt lighter compared to what was in my chest. When I reached the bedroom, the small space felt foreign to me, but I welcomed the change. As I unpacked, I tried to push thoughts of Kai from my mind, but they kept creeping back in. Just as I was setting up my bed, my phone vibrated again. I hesitated before picking it up, thinking it would probably be Ivar or Claire. But when I saw the name on the screen, my heart raced. It was Kai. My breath was wailing as I read through the message, choosing myself. Nevia, please. Can we talk? I need to see you. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Did he really think he could just fix things with a simple message? After everything, I was shaking when I was typing my reply. I don't think it's a good idea right now. Before I could even put the phone down, it rang and Kai was calling. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the decline button, but something stopped me. I took a deep breath and answered. What do you want, Kai? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Nevia, it shouldn't go this far. Let's talk about this, please, he said with a mix of desperation and warmth. Why? So you can cancel again? So you can tell me how much you care while still prioritizing Claire? My voice rose, anger flaring up again, choosing myself. No. I wanted to explain. I know that you are hurt. I understand it. This is not because of Claire. I am an alpha and I'm responsible for every pack member's safety. She is my responsibility. I scoffed, shaking my head even though he couldn't see me. Kai, she's always injured. Don't you find it a little odd? Come on, Nevia. Anything can happen during training. You will always get hurt as you learn new fighting skills. Injury is all part of learning. Any child could understand that, Kai said with irritation. Are you trying to say that I am childish? And Claire getting injured all the time is not behaving like one? No, it's not like that. You have every right to be upset. We have been preparing for the mating ceremony for months. But you know we can never predict what will happen. Luckily, Claire's injury was not choosing myself that bad. She will heal in a day or two. We could schedule again the mating ceremony. What is a day or two delay? I can't do this right now, I finally said, my voice trembling. Nevia, please. I just need you to hear me out. Can we at least meet? Just to talk. Kai pleaded. Talk. About what? About how you chose Claire over me. You know what? I'm done hearing excuses. It's not an excuse. I just need a moment to explain everything. I thought you'd understand my position of being an alpha. This isn't just about us. Right, because your responsibilities are clearly more important than our relationship. I get it, Kai, but that doesn't change how I feel. He sighed and I could hear the frustration in his breath, choosing myself. You rewrite, it doesn't. But I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted to do what was best for the pack. You know I care about you, don't you? Do I? Because it sure doesn't feel that way. You keep saying you care, but your actions tell a different story. Kai was about to argue about his responsibilities. He couldn't stop. I felt like a child he had to lecture because I couldn't understand what it was to be alpha. I ended the call without asking for permission. Kai called again and I didn't pick up. Instead, I turned off my phone. Misplaced loyalties 43. Kai laughter and chatter made the house lively and full of energy. Ivor's birthday party drew the entire pack together, and it felt good to see everyone enjoying themselves. As I scanned the house, I found Nevia standing at the bar, engaged in conversation but not entirely present. It didn't matter, I was glad that she came. Nevia was probably tired. She had been busy these days with work, and Ivar mentioned she was not in the mood for a party. But here she was. That was Nevia always doing the right thing and putting others before herself. "Hey, Alpha Kai," Claire called, pulling me from my thoughts. She looked at me with those hopeful eyes. "Could you please help me with these prawns and crabs? I can't peel them with misplaced loyalties my arm like this." I hesitated for a moment because I thought of talking to Nevia. I glanced at her and she was still talking to one healer. I would talk to her later. I couldn't leave Claire hanging. "Sure," I said, moving to sit beside her. "Thanks. You real lifesaver," Claire responded with a bright smile. I picked up one prawn and crab and began peeling them. This part of being an alpha sometimes could suck, but it was a good thing that I needed to do this with Claire. Other members sometimes could be demanding. "You always so kind to me, Alpha Kai. I don't know what I'd do without you," she said, leaning at me. "It's nothing. Just doing what I should." As I continued peeling, Ivar joined us, holding 2 drinks in his hands. Misplaced loyalties handed one to me and shot a knowing glance at Claire. "You really know how to make a guy feel useful, huh? What a gentleman," he teased. I chuckled and handed another peeled prawn to Claire. "Just helping a pack member who needs it." Ivar leaned against the table and glanced at Nevia, standing alone now. She had been holding her drink since she came, and it remained untouched. "Hey Kai, why don't you peel some prawns and crabs for Nevia? I'm sure she would appreciate that too." I frowned. I didn't come here to be peeling plates of seafood. Nevia could easily do it by herself. "Nevia's fine. She's just taking a break," I said, trying to convince myself. Misplaced loyalties. Ivar raised an eyebrow. "You really think so? She doesn't look so happy." "Of course, she's fine. She understands. I'm here for Claire because she's hurt. It's not a big deal," I said with a forced smile while glancing at Nevia, who looked irritated. Claire darted her gaze between us. She looked more concerned and worried than earlier. "I hope I'm not causing trouble between you two. I wouldn't want Nevia to feel like I'm coming between you. After all, she is your mate, Alpha Kai. She also deserved some attention from you," Claire said softly. "No, you not," I replied quickly, but doubt crept in. I caught Nevia's eye, but she quickly looked away. She knows I'm just helping. Misplaced loyalties. I felt an odd tension as I handed some crab meat to Claire. "You such a good Alpha Kai. It's nice to see you take care of your pack." I shrugged, dismissing the praise. "It's just what I do. You part of the pack, Claire. It's my responsibility to make sure everyone is okay." Claire looked at me, smiled, and leaned close again. "Still, you make it look effortless." I couldn't help but smile, but my gaze went to Nevia. She had moved away from the group and crossed her arms as she watched us. I felt a pang of unease but brushed it off. She had to understand this was just part of being alpha. As the main course was served, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off with Nevia. She had never been this angry this much. She behaved differently, and I misplaced loyalties couldn't understand why she made things difficult. "Nevia, want some prawns?" I called out, trying to break the ice. She looked up, her expression neutral. "No, I'm good thanks," she said, her voice steady but distant. Before I could respond, Ivar chimed, "Come on, Nevia. You can't just stand there. Join us. Kai's practically the seafood king over here." Nevia smiled politely but shook her head. "Really, I'm fine. I think I'm going to head home," Nevia insisted. "Already? It's still early," I asked, surprised. "I've got work tomorrow." "Tell Ivar happy birthday for me," she replied. She looked at me, but her eyes lacked that warmth they used. Tommy's placed loyalties. "Wait, let me walk you out," I said, immediately standing up. "There's no need. I'll be fine," Nevia said quickly, her voice firm. I felt a tightness in my chest. "Nevia, come on. We barely got to talk tonight. Can't you stay a bit longer?" "I can't. I really need to go," Nevia said with a hint of frustration. And just like that, Nevia headed towards the door without looking back. I watched her leave and felt my stomach twisted. What was going on with her? Claire looked at me still with worry and concern that she looked like she was about to cry. She seems upset. Are you sure everything's okay? Yeah, she's fine, I replied, but my voice lacked conviction. Misplaced loyalties. I can't help but feel like I'm causing problems. I'm sorry that I had another injury yesterday. I didn't mean to come between you two. I'm sure she was deeply hurt that your mating ceremony got cancelled. I would feel the same way, too. You not. Nivea knows that. It's just she's tired, I guess. I'll just text her. I pulled out my phone and quickly typed, Nivea, let me know when you get home. We need to talk. I hit send but the message wouldn't go through. I frowned and tried calling Nivea but it went straight to voicemail. I stood there staring at my phone in disbelief. Nivea blocked me. Breaking point. Nivea. I immediately went to make tea and sat on the couch. I felt lightheaded and hoped that the morning light would do some magic. After a few sips, I felt better. Then, I grabbed my phone and checked some emails. I was typing a response to one email when the Fireblood Pack group chat kept buzzing with new messages. Last night, I promised to stop checking the group but my fingers seemed to have their own mind. It was Claire. Of course, it was. She had sent some pictures once again, hoping to gain attention. My heart sank as my eyes landed on the latest photo. Kai's car parked outside Claire's house. Claire captioned it with, always safe with my alpha. Simple words, but they hit like a punch in my gut. My grip on the phone tightened as I read the comments. Breaking point. They make such a cute couple. Moon Goddess should ve paired them together. I've never seen Kai so relaxed. They just fit, you know. My chest constricted, my breath coming in short and shallow. Kai and I had been together for 5 years, but I felt like a stranger to our relationship. Everyone in the pack seemed to favor Claire, the sweet Omega, who always had Kai's attention. Nobody seemed to care that I was Kai's mate. The phone vibrated again, causing my stomach to flip. This time, it was a selfie. Claire stood beside Kai, smiling with his arm draped casually over her shoulders. They looked intimate. The caption read, after the party, my alpha ensured I got home safe. How lucky am I? The playful emojis that followed did nothing to soften the blow. Breaking point. My vision blurred as tears welled in my eyes. I quickly wiped them away but the hollow feeling in my chest remained. It was always like this. Claire posted pictures claiming little moments with Kai while I watched from the sidelines, helpless and hurting. A knock on the door startled me. I immediately stood, brushed my hair away from my face, and walked to the door. When I opened it, I found a deliveryman smiling and holding a small package. Delivery for Nivea, he said, handing me the package. I frowned. But I didn't order anything. It's from Kai, the man explained and left. I stood in the doorway, staring at the small bag containing my favorite breakfast, warm croissants and fresh fruit. Kai always knew how to soothe me after an argument. Breaking point. But today, it did nothing. I just dropped the bag on the kitchen counter. Kai was probably with Claire, making sure she was comfortable and laughing just like in the pictures. I leaned against the counter, my mind racing with the memories of all the times Kai had chosen Claire over her. At first, it was small things, helping Claire with training or attending to her when she was hurt. But over time, Claire always gets in the way. Kai used to have a crush on Claire when they were in the 10th grade, and I felt like those feelings hadn't died. And that was why Kai kept pushing me further and further away. Another message came, and it was still a picture of Kai and Claire, but they were laughing while at the training grounds. Claire had captioned it, Alpha Kai always knows how to make me smile. Frustration boiled in me, so I threw the phone onto the couch. It wasn't fair. I had given everything to Kai, my heart, loyalty, breaking point, and life, but he still chose Claire. It was always Claire. Suddenly, the door swung open and Kai walked in. His brow furrowed, sensing I was not in a good mood today. His eyes landed on the untouched breakfast, and he sighed. We need to talk, he said with a low voice. I folded my arms across my chest as anger rose. About what? Another photo of you and Claire. Or maybe how everyone in the pack thinks you two are a perfect match. Kai's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice calm. Ivar and Claire are a little upset that you left the party early last night. Maybe we could invite them for dinner. To clear the air. I stared in disbelief while my mind was breaking point, already cursing him. Invite them for dinner? I repeated, my voice started to rise. Are you serious right now? Kai, you barely spoke to me at the party because you were too busy peeling seafood for Claire. And I upset them. Now, I have to dine with them to appease them. Are you joking? Kai ran a hand through his hair, frustration clear in his eyes. Nivea, it's not like that. I'm trying to fix things here. Fix things? I shook my head, struggling to control my tears. He cancelled our mating ceremony for Claire's fake injury, and Kai didn't make an effort to fix things. I left early last night for work, and here he was fixing things because she was upset. How considerate of him. Breaking point. Yeah, when others are upset, you find ways to fix things. Out of alpha duty, right? Kai's shoulders sagged as he exhaled. Nevia, I'm not asking you to be best friends with Claire. I could feel it hurt you that she got hurt, and I had to cancel the mating ceremony. But Ivar is my beta, and Claire is part of the pack. They were hurt by what happened. We can't let people gossip about how inconsiderate we are. And what about never mind? I am going to prepare for work now. My voice cracked in pain. Kai's eyes softened, and for a moment, I thought he might feel my pain. But he just took out his phone and checked some messages. The restaurant is already reserved. You have to be there by exactly p.m. Don't be late, please. Kai turned around and left me so pissed. Breaking point. Fine, whatever. I muttered to myself, but deeply wounded. Dinner of disillusion. Nevia, I was late and I didn't care. Part of me hoped for the dinner to get cancelled. But deep down, I knew Kai wouldn't let that happen. He was determined to make this dinner work, as if it would serve as a bandage to cover whatever was wrong between us. And we would become close like nothing happened. I stared at the mirror and adjusted the simple black bodycon dress I had chosen for this dinner. I selected it because it emphasized my hourglass body, but my face still looked haggard despite applying makeup and arranging my hair. I had been burying myself in work to pretend I was okay. But maybe tonight I could stop pretending. The drive to Oriental restaurant was short, and my heart pounded with each passing street. I wasn't sure what to expect with dinner of disillusion this dinner, but I knew it would hurt. Lately, everything with Kai had been painful. I took a deep breath before I went to the restaurant's entrance. I needed to pull myself together. I didn't want anyone to be satisfied seeing how much affected I was. I opened the door and immediately located the private room that Kai reserved. It was the biggest and most comfortable one. My stomach twisted when I reached the private room door and heard the familiar voices. I was about to open the door when I heard Ivar speak. Claire, you are better for Kai. Everyone can see that. I froze and my hand remained on the handle, but the door was left ajar. Ivar wasn't drunk and not bothered that I could walk in any time. He was calm and almost certain that he was saying the obvious truth. Anger flared in my chest. Dinner of disillusion, but sadness quickly swallowed it. There it was, the truth I had been trying to ignore, coming from Kai's best friend and beta. I thought about running, but something urged me to keep listening. Honestly, it doesn't make sense for Kai to be with Nevia. The pack doesn't respect her the way they do with you. Claire, you were the one who's always been there for him. And Kai is always laughing and stressed-free with you, Ivar continued, his voice steady. I clenched my fists and my nails dug into my palm, but I couldn't feel the pain. Ivar wasn't only talking about Claire, but also my place in the pack. He made me feel that I would never be enough, nor do I belong to the pack. I know, Claire said softly, and I could almost hear the smile in her voice. But I don't want to come between them. Come on, Claire, Ivar said with a laugh. After 6 dinner of disillusion, you're not coming between them. This is just the way it's supposed to be. Kai still has feelings for you. He always has. My chest tightened and I struggled to breathe. Kai still had feelings for Claire. I had always suspected it, but getting a confirmation hit me deeply. I should have run before hearing something worse, but I couldn't. I remained rooted in my spot, and I felt like breaking down. Claire sighed, her voice filled with feigned concern. I just don't want to hurt Nevia. She's nice, but she's not the right fit for him. I don't think she can handle being with someone like Kai, not long term. Exactly. She's not strong enough. Kai needs someone who can stand by his side, and not be emotional, someone like you. Because it's not just about love, Claire. It's about what's best for the pack. And everyone knows that dinner of disillusion. I swallowed hard because my throat went dry. Ivar's words kept repeating in my head. Not strong enough. Not right for him. They had dissected my relationship with Kai, laid it bare, and exposed every insecurity I had tried to bury. I leaned closer to the door, my pulse racing, waiting for Claire to respond. Kai does mean a lot to me. And maybe you right. Maybe we better suited for each other, Claire said with her usual soft and sweet voice. Their conversation was like a blow to me, and I struggled to keep my tears from falling. How long had Kai felt this way? How long had he kept it from me while I kept thinking I was never good enough? Of course, I'm right. I've known Kai longer than anyone. He's always been protective of you, Claire. He's always cared about you more than anyone else. Nevia's just a distraction. She's not his future, Ivar said with a smirk. Dinner of disillusion. My heart shattered at those words. A distraction. Was that all I had been to Kai? All this time, while I had been fighting for our relationship, had Kai just been waiting for an excuse to leave? I don't know. It's complicated, Claire responded coyly. It doesn't have to be. Kai just needs to stop pretending and admit the truth. You and him, that's what's right. The pack sees it, I see it, and deep down, he knows it too. I couldn't listen anymore. I backed away from the door, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I turned and was about to run away from this place when I bumped into someone. Kai, his brow furrowed in confusion, and asked, Nevia, what are you doing out here? I almost couldn't speak. The words caught dinner of disillusion in my throat as I looked into Kai's eyes, searching for some sign of the man I thought I knew. But all I could think of was what Ivar had said. I shook my head and stepped back. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me you still have feelings for her? Kai's eyes widened, but he didn't respond. He stared at me and his mouth opened and closed, but nothing came out. I didn't wait for him to answer. I didn't need to. His silence said enough. And without another word, I turned and ran away with a shattered heart. Running from the past Nevia, my heart pounded with every step I took. I needed to escape. I needed to outrun Kai. I couldn't handle the pain or betrayal without breaking down. Nevia, wait, Kai called as he chased after me. My legs burned, but I pushed myself harder. I just needed space. I needed time to think without Kai pulling me back into the same cycle of promises and disappointments. But I could hear his footsteps growing closer. Damn, Kai, why can't you just leave me alone? I muttered to myself. After 3 steps, a strong hand grabbed my arm and yanked me back with force. I stumbled, nearly falling, but before I could hit the ground, Kai's arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me against his chest. His running from the past breath was hot on my neck, and his grip was tight and firm. Nevia, stop. Please, just stop running, Kai pleaded, but sounded almost about to run out of patience. Let go of me, Kai. I shouted and struggled against him. But Kai held, so I pushed at his chest and tried to break free. He was stronger, so it was useless. I'm not letting you go until you talk to me, he insisted. Kai was not going to let go. My chest heaved as I stopped fighting. It was exhausting, both physically and emotionally, and useless against his strength. What do you want from me? What else is there to say, Kai? I asked, my voice breaking with the weight of my frustration. He loosened his grip just enough for me turning from the past turn around and face him, but his hands still held me. His eyes searched mine with desperation. I just want you to listen. We need to talk. I scoffed and shook my head. Talk about what? How do you keep choosing her over me? How I've been waiting for you to prioritize me, and you never do. Kai's jaw clenched and guilt washed all over his face. But instead of letting it soften me, it made me angrier. You canceled our mating ceremony, Kai. You chose Claire again. It wasn't about choosing Claire, he said quickly and tightened his grip on my arms. She's part of the pack, Nevia. She got hurt, and as alpha, I had to take care of her running from the past. You didn't have to cancel our ceremony, I shot back, my voice sharp. You didn't even tell me yourself. You sent a text. A text, Kai. After 5 years together, that's all I got. He opened his mouth to respond, but I wasn't finished. Do you know how humiliating that was? Do you know how many times I've had to stand by and watch while you rush off to her and make her your priority? What about me, Kai? When am I ever going to come first? Kai's face went pale, and for a moment, he looked like he had no idea what to say. That silence and hesitation were everything I needed to know. I stepped back and pulled away from his grasp. You always have an excuse. Being alpha, taking care of the pack, Claire's fake injuries. But you know what? I'm done waiting for you to put me first. I'm done running from the past, Kai. Those words were so heavy and final that they hung the air between us. For the first time, I felt I had taken control and chosen myself. But that didn't make it any less painful. Kai's face crumpled, he stepped forward and desperately whispered, Nevia, don't do this. Please, let's not make my responsibilities an issue between us. I can't choose between the two. Just give me a chance to make it up to you. I shook my head as tears fell. You still don't get it. But you know what, I've given you enough chances, Kai. I've waited long enough. There was silence again between us, and it was thick and suffocating. Kai reached for me again, but I stepped back and shook my head. I need to go, I whispered, walking away before he could see how broken I felt running from the past. As I walked away, the weight of my decision pressed down like a boulder on my chest. Every step felt heavier than the last, and I almost wondered if I had made a mistake. Did I not give Kai enough chance to explain and make it up to me? Was I rushing things because of how hurt I was? These and other questions run through my head, but deep down, I knew I made the most Rational decision. I had waited long enough for Kai to choose me and be one of his priorities. But he never would. And I couldn't keep sacrificing my happiness for someone who couldn't see my worth. When I finally reached my apartment, I collapsed onto the couch and buried my face in my hand. The sobs immediately came and I couldn't control them. I had been telling myself that it was all for the best to walk away from the man I had loved, and I thought I could handle my emotions, but I think I was just fooling myself running from the past. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. I reached for it and was expecting a message from Kai. I had forgotten to block his other number. I had to remember to do that. But surprisingly, it was Ivar. Nevia, don't be too hard on him. He's trying. You were supposed to lessen his burdens. Ha! Lessen his burdens, my ass. I hissed. I was about to block Kai's other number when the group chat buzzed again. As expected, Claire was getting sympathy and approval from the pack members. She sent a picture of her sitting beside Kai as they ate at Oriental restaurant. Her arms clung to his as they smiled. Alpha Kai, you always made me feel the most important person. Congratulations, I commented and set the group to mute until I decided to change it. Then, the phone rang. It was Kai, but I ignored and blocked him. Confronting the Alpha Nevia, the silence of the office was my only companion as the clock ticked to PM. Most of my colleagues had already gone home, and it was a great distraction from the chaos of my personal life. Endless emails, articles to write, and meetings kept me from thinking of Kai. Work had been my refuge. I glanced at my phone and saw Kai had sent me a message from a social media app that he hadn't blocked yet. I just downloaded Instagram for work purposes, and I didn't know how he managed to find me. For a moment I considered answering, but what would be the point? We'd been through this, and it was always his alpha responsibility to take care of Claire. And I had to come second to her. I sighed and ignored his message. I didn't confronting the alpha even bother reading it. Maybe we could talk someday when we're both okay, but not now. I continued writing my 2 pending articles to be submitted today. An hour later, the door to my office creaked open. The smell of earthy pine captured my nose. I didn't have to look to know who it was. Busy night, Kai said with a soft voice, careful not to irritate me. I kept my eyes on the screen, pretending to be engrossed in editing the articles I just finished writing. Isn't it obvious? I replied. He moved closer to my desk, and because of his scent, his presence was impossible to ignore. Even if I tried to shut him out, his alpha aura was so strong and attractive that it drew my attention. Damn, being mates, my mind yelled out of anger. Confronting the alpha, you didn't reply to my messages, he said calmly, but I could sense frustration. Can't you see how busy I am? I muttered, my fingers tightening around the mouse as I tried to focus on anything but him. We need to talk. There he was. Kai needed to remind me again of how an alpha works, and I had to ignore my feelings every time. But I wasn't in the mood to hear that again. It was becoming irritating. There's nothing to talk about, I replied, pushing back my chair and walking toward the window. But Kai, as usual, was a persistent jerk. He wouldn't rest until he got what he wanted. He followed me and spoke in a little commanding voice. Don't do that, Nevia. Don't shut me out. I turned to face him with my pent-up confronting the alpha frustration. I'm not shutting you out, Kai. After all, you are still the alpha of our pack. But I'm dealing with things the only way I know how. By drowning yourself in work. That's not dealing with anything, he scoffed and ran a hand through his hair. My patience snapped. What would you have me do? Pretend everything's fine. Pretend that seeing you with Claire doesn't bother me. God, Kai. I had been doing that for how long now? Kai's jaw tightened and his eyes flashed with anger. Claire and I, it's not what you think, isn't it? I shot back, my voice rising. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you always with her. And I'm always left standing on the sidelines. Confronting the alpha. Nevia, you have always been my choice. Everyone thinks I was still the teenage kid who had a crush on Claire. But I had outgrown it now. He moved close, but I stepped back, keeping the distance between us. Then, why does it feel like I am second best? Or you still have feelings for her? My voice cracked, and I hated myself for showing him how much it hurt. He let out a frustrated sigh. Claire is part of the pack. She's important to the pack. You know that. And I know you have responsibilities, but it still doesn't make sense. My voice softened, the anger draining out of me, leaving me exhausted. I can't keep pretending that everything's okay. Neither of us spoke. The silence was heavy, filled with everything we weren't saying. I confronting the alpha didn't know how to fix this, and I wasn't sure Kai did either. Before I could say anything more, a flash of headlights illuminated the window. I turned and saw Mr. Smith's car about to leave the parking lot. Mr. Smith, my boss, waved at me from behind the wheel. I just remembered he offered me a ride home after his virtual meeting. I'll be right out, I told him and stepped away from the window. Who's that? Kai's voice was sharp, a mix of confusion and suspicion. I didn't turn to look at him. My boss. Your boss? Since when does your boss give you rides home? I let out an exasperated sigh and grabbed my bag. Since he noticed I've been working late confronting the alpha, Kai moved closer, and jealousy was all over his face. You working late a lot these days. Are you sure that's all it is? You don't call me for a ride. What exactly are you accusing me of? His eyes narrowed, but his voice remained calm. I don't know, Nevia. You won't talk to me, you always avoiding me, and now you getting rides from another man. What am I supposed to think? I could hardly believe what I was hearing. Are you serious right now? You think I cheated on you? You tell me, Kai snapped, because it seemed to look that way. I took a deep breath and tried to keep my voice steady. We broke up, Kai. I told you that when confronting the alpha you cancelled our mating ceremony. We redone. So I don't owe you an explanation. Kai's eyes darkened and his hands clenched into fists. We didn't break up. You decided that, not me. And I don't agree. I let out a bitter laugh. I don't need your approval, Kai. This isn't about you being alpha. You don't get to decide my life. I didn't wait for him to answer and went to Mr. Smith. Unveiling deception, Nevia. I had just finished sending my last email when I heard the door swung open, and it was so annoying. I looked up and found Ivar standing with bandages on his right arm. His strong and arrogant look was gone because he looked beaten and pale. Ivar. I frowned and stood. What's going on? What happened to you? Ivar let out a faint smile and closed the door, and he slowly walked towards me. I need to talk to you, he said with a strained voice. It's about everything. Everything? I asked, and my eyes furrowed. What does that even mean? Unveiling deception. Ivar let out a breath and rubbed the back of his neck. It's about Kai, about Claire and me. Something I think you would be dying to know. I raised an eyebrow. Ivar might have been beaten down, but his mouth remained the same. I'm really not in the mood to talk about Kai or Claire right now, Ivar. In case you missed it, I no longer care. I am busy with work, with life. I know, he said quickly, his voice unsteady. But you need to hear this, Nevia. It's important. It's my fault. I blinked as I was caught off guard. What? Ivar took a deep breath and looked me in the eye. Unveiling deception. I messed up. Big time. Everything that's happened between you and Kai, it's partly my fault. I stared at him because Ivar's words didn't fully register. What are you talking about, Ivar? Guilt flashed all over Ivar's face. He was not faking it, but I still find it odd. I've been pushing Kai and Claire together, manipulating things behind your back. I thought I was doing the right thing, but it was wrong. My heart thudded in my chest. You've been what? I thought, he began, his voice low and rushed, that if I could push Claire and Kai together, maybe Claire would finally lose interest in him, and he paused and swallowed hard. She'd notice me instead. I blinked in disbelief. I've heard rumors unveiling deception that Ivar liked Claire, but I never thought it was true. So you've been playing matchmaker. For what? To make her see you. And you let me believe Kai was just throwing me aside. Hey, I really thought I was helping, Ivar said, almost desperately. I thought if Kai realized Claire wasn't right for him, he'd defocus on you. And he'd Claire well, maybe she'd finally see that I was the one who's been there for her. Anger boiled in me that I probably looked red, but it didn't matter. You were manipulating us. You intentionally ruined everything. I know, I'm sorry, okay. I really didn't mean to. I didn't expect it to go this far. I thought it would clear the air between Claire and Kai, but I guess I worsened the situation. I studied Ivar for a moment. I know their unveiling deception was a hint of truth in what he said, but did he tell the whole truth? Did Kai have anything to do with these? Was Ivar coerced? Ivar, you are beta for a reason. It was not just because Kai was your best friend and your father was a beta, but I had seen your combat skills and you're almost as good as Kai. And so, what exactly happened to you? I asked, and I didn't bother to hide my suspicion on him. You mean this? Ivar said, raising his bandaged arm. Oh, this is nothing. Training. You know how intense it could become. Please, stop copying Claire. She is the queen of injury. She is more fragile than a toddler. Tell me what exactly happened, Ivar. Did Kai beat you up and send you here? Ivar chuckled and sighed. Alright, Kai had been observing me and unveiling deception Claire. Earlier, while sparring, he really intentionally hurt me to punish me. He asked if I said something that might have offended you. He beat the shit out of me, and I was forced to tell him what I said to Claire during that dinner he arranged. I'm sure you have heard it, and so he broke my arm that it will take 2 days to heal. But I know I was right that something was off. And so Kai sent you here to fix things on behalf of him, I interrupted. But listen, Nevia. What I told you earlier was the truth. It has nothing to do with Kai. I came here because of pure conscience. When you left and ignored him, Kai became irritable with almost everyone, even Claire. He made everyone see that because of his duty to everyone, his life had been miserable and lonely. And so, he didn't care whether he was rude or not, but as long as he fulfilled his basic responsibility. Kai had lost his sense of living. He blamed himself, and I hate to see him like that. This is why I came to beg you, Unveiling Deception, to give him another chance. Kai deserves it, and you know he is all worth it. Please, Nevia. I felt like crying when I imagined how sad and hurt Kai might have been. But he still hurt me for being so blind, for just allowing our relationship to be the last of his priorities. I sighed and said, it's too late now, Ivar. And why did he only send you? Even now, all he ever told me was that he is alpha, and it's his responsibility. That he sounded like a broken record. He doesn't seem to understand how painful it is to me. Please, Nevia. I'm begging you to give him another chance. One last chance, please, Nevia. I shook my head and replied with a firm voice. I'm sorry, Ivar. I have made up my mind. I don't think Kai and I fit together, just like what you said. I thought we were, but I was. A game exposed 43 Kai. I stood silently behind the massive oak tree that bordered the training grounds. I locked my gaze onto the center of the field, where Claire was training with a group of pack members. I specifically requested her to spar with the young members to help me gauge her body. But I was surprised to watch her movements fluid, sharp, graceful, and with accurate precision. I would consider her impressive if I didn't know she had an injury. Most of the pack members, even me, thought that Claire was a fragile, sweet, and innocent Omega who needed constant protection. It was how she had always presented herself, and the pack never doubted it. They doted on her, rushed to her aid whenever she needed help, and reported to me that she always suffered a fatal injury. I even G1A game exposed considered having her transferred to being a healer. But now, I think I know better. My lips pressed into a thin line as I continued to watch her. Claire wasn't fragile at all. She was one of the most skilled and ruthless fighters when she wanted to be. Her strikes were perfect, her footwork impeccable, but she hid that skill from everyone except the weakest Omegas. Nevia must have witnessed her doing the same thing. Suddenly, Claire stumbled in the middle of a routine drill and cried as she clutched her ankle. My eyes narrowed. It was right on cue. As expected, 2 younger pack members immediately rushed to her side. They were the newer recruits to be one of the warriors, barely old enough to train. They looked at Claire with worry and concerned eyes. Claire, are you okay? One of the girls asked, her voice trembling. Claire winced dramatically, biting Hera game exposed lower lip as she pressed her hand to her ankle. I think I twisted it, she said, her voice soft and pitiful. I'll be fine, though. I just need a moment. The young recruits exchanged glances, unsure of what to do. One of them hesitated before offering Claire her arm for support. Claire accepted and leaned heavily on the girl as she limped toward the edge of the training field. I clenched my jaw, trying to control my temper. I had seen this scene several times while doing my rounds at the training grounds. However, now I see through Claire's act. But what infuriated me the most was what happened next. The training ended due to her injury, and her demeanor suddenly changed. Gone was the sweet, delicate Omega who needed protecting. Claire stood cold with a smirk, a game exposed curled on her lips as she watched the recruits she had tricked earlier. She sauntered to the 2 who had helped her with a disdainful expression. I remained in the shadows, watching closely while my muscles tensed, anticipating what would happen next. You think that was good enough? Claire said with a sharp voice. You pathetic. No wonder Kai never looks your way. The younger of the 2 recruits flinched. Her eyes widened in shock as her response stammered. But Claire didn't give her the chance. You'll never be anything in this pack. You might as well give up now, Claire, a game exposed said coldly. The second girl looked down, her face flushing with embarrassment and hurt. They were too afraid to speak and to stand up to Claire. She had that effect on people. She manipulated them, twisted their insecurities, and used her position to make herself untouchable. But today, she would no longer be untouchable. My patience had finally worn out. I knew Claire had that childish behavior, but I just let it slide. I still had a duty to take care of her, not just as an alpha but as respect to her dead mother. My father had specifically instructed me to watch over her and be there for her whenever she needed someone. But with what I witnessed now, I guess I had done more than enough. It was time for Claire to have some growing up. Later that evening, I called the 2 young recruits to my office. They entered hesitantly and their eyes wide with a game exposed confusion and nervousness. "Come in," I instructed, firm but gentle. I motioned for them to sit in front of my desk. Silence at first filled the room as I studied them. Why were they so afraid? It was the younger one who spoke first and broke the silence. "Alpha Kai, we haven't done anything wrong. I swear we didn't. And so why are we summoned here?" "You didn't do anything wrong," I reassured her, smiling. "I need you to tell me what happened with Claire today. Don't be afraid to tell me the truth." The girl looked down at her hands, her fingers fidgeting nervously in her lap. She told us we were weak. That we didn't belong in the pack," she said quietly. My eyes darkened. I knew already just how a game exposed Claire done something worse than what she did earlier. "What do you mean, Nana Lolita? What evidence?" Beneath the surface 43 Kai Nana Lolita was known to be a keen observer and better at judging one's character. And so, I was eager to listen to her. "Alpha," Nana began, her voice calm yet firm. "I've been observing Claire during training. You wouldn't believe me by simply talking. I have an Omega in mind to spar with Claire so you could see her in action." I frowned slightly. "Are you trying to suggest for Claire to be challenged?" "If you are talking about her fighting skills, I think I have seen enough today." Nana chuckled. "Alpha Kai, you haven't seen a devil beneath the surface unleash her dark self yet." I narrowed my eyes. "Devil? Was Claire that bad?" "Okay, and challenging her would force her to do that." Nana nodded. "Yes, that's right. I knew an Omega who had pushed herself to be strong and equally good as Claire. Jade is still young, but she has learned well." "Jade's good, but I don't want her getting hurt," I said. I rubbed the back of my neck. For a moment, I became worried for Jade. I didn't know what Claire had done to her. Normally, I would think that Claire was just being a good senior and imparting her knowledge. But Jade just started training 3 months ago, so something pushed Jade that far. "Fine. Let's see how Claire does with Jade. Beneath the surface tomorrow. Maybe she just needs a reminder of what real competition looks like." Nana gave him a knowing look, her weathered face softening. "Good decision, Alpha Kai. But keep an eye on her. Sometimes, a reminder isn't enough." She turned to leave, and her cane tapped softly against the floor as she walked. The next day, I stood at my usual spot hidden from sight yet close enough to watch the training grounds. Claire was already there, stretching and preparing for her sparring session with Jade. Jade, on the other hand, was trying to keep her nerves in check. I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she kept glancing at Claire as if expecting the worst. Jade made me doubt if I had made the right decision, but I needed to see what Nana wanted to imply beneath the surface initially. It began like a regular sparring match. Jade moved quickly, using her smaller size to her advantage. Claire only smirked and looked at her, as if she wanted to kill her. Claire suddenly lunged at Jade, and with every strike, it became harder and more aggressive. She was not testing Jade, she was punishing her. But for what? Why? I clenched my fists as I watched Claire knock Jade to the ground, her foot pressing against her chest, pinning her down. Jade grunted in pain, and her wolf wanted to come out, but Jade was trying so hard to resist it. "Get up, Jade," Claire sneered, her voice loud enough to echo across the grounds. "Or is that all you've got? You are still the same stupid and weak Omega 3 months ago. I told you I don't like weak and stupid. What did you say to me last time?" "Oh, you yelled I would beat you up, bitch." Beneath the surface, Claire laughed like an evil. "Well, this bitch still could pin you to the ground. Stop dreaming and go clean toilets instead." My jaw tightened. I haven't heard Claire talk like that. She wasn't sparring, she was bullying her. My mind raced, replaying the times I had defended Claire, stepping in whenever she claimed to be hurt or needed my help. But Claire used her position to dominate and belittle those weaker than her. I hurriedly requested Claire and Jade to my office, causing the fight to end. Claire came with her sweet and gentle aura, while Jade looked defeated and hurt. "Claire, what were you doing?" I asked immediately. Claire looked at me, confused about what was happening. "What do you mean, Alpha Kai? Didn't you request me to train with Jade?" "I'm so sorry, I beneath the surface am not that very good, I know. I don't really like fighting, you know that," Claire answered, using her sweet voice that had fooled a lot. I turned to Jade and asked, "How long has she been bullying you?" "Bullying? Me? Alpha Kai, I think someone is lying to you." "I had never done that," Claire interrupted. I hit my desk to silence her. I didn't bother if she got offended. Claire needed to stop pretending and grow up. "Answer me, Jade," I shouted. Since 3 months ago," Jade stuttered. "Go to the healer and have your wounds treated." "Alpha, she's lying. You have known me since childhood and I would never do that." "Jade, stop lying, please." Claire interrupted again beneath the fawn. "Shut up, Claire," I shouted, causing her to break into tears. Go now, Jade. As soon as Jade left, I looked at Claire sharply. I had watched you fight from afar for 2 days. I already know who you are exactly. I called you here and gave you a chance to be honest and apologize, but you didn't. Claire gritted her teeth. The ruthless, cold, and bully Claire appeared. Yes, that's how I am. But it's your fault. I didn't respond, and Claire continued. You once confessed you liked me, and then suddenly your feelings shifted to Nevia. I didn't know what you saw in her. She was boring, too kind, and nice. Then, I realized if lacked kinder, gentler, and sweeter than her, you would soon return to me. Kai, you and I are the ones meant to be. You are better with me, can't you see? Beneath the surface my eyes widened, but now it was clear to me. It was just a stupid crush when we were younger, Claire. I cared for you out of respect for your mother and my father's order. But with Nevia, I had fallen for her authenticity, and she was my mate. And so, forget about me and get out. Claire couldn't believe it and left running. A new opportunity. 43 Nevia. I sat across from Mr. Smith, my editor-in-chief, trying to hide my nervousness. My heart pounded as I watched him scroll through something on his laptop with an unreadable expression. Why had he called me? He never called me in unless it was important. And after what felt like hours, he glanced up at me. Nevia, you've been doing excellent work lately, he said with a serious tone. I nodded, my fingers clutching the armrests of my chair. Compliments were nice, but Mr. Smith wasn't the kind of person to give them out without a reason. My mind raced with possibilities. I've been thinking a lot about your future with the company. You've been consistent, and your pieces resonate with our readers. That's something I value. A new opportunity. Thank you, sir, I replied, my voice steady even though my stomach was doing somersaults. There's an opportunity coming up, he said with excitement. It's a major assignment, a year-long exclusive covering one of the biggest fashion events in the werewolf world. It's hosted by the Luna Andrea of the Shadow Pack in Idaho. My breath caught in my throat. The Shadow Pack was one of the most influential packs. The event wouldn't just be about fashion, power, politics, and everything in between. And Mr. Smith wanted me to cover it. He smiled as he noticed my wide-eyed look. I thought you'd be interested. Interested? I repeated, barely containing my excitement. A new opportunity. This is incredible. And if you deliver the kind of quality content I know you're capable of, we 11 have to talk about that editor position you've been eyeing for a long time. I felt like the floor dropped beneath me. I had been dreaming of being an editor, and finally, it's within my reach. Of course, this isn't just a fashion show. You'll live in Idaho for a year, embedded within the Shadow Pack's world. It 11 give you access to Luna Andrea and her inner circle, and the chance to report on more than just the clothes. You'll get to explore the politics of the pack, the alliances, the rivalries, everything. My heart was racing. It was the kind of assignment that could make or break a career. I couldn't believe it that Mr. Smith was offering it to me. When do I leave? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. A new opportunity in 2 weeks. That should give you enough time to wrap up things here and prepare. 2 weeks. It wasn't a lot of time, but it was enough. I'd spent the last few months feeling stuck between my job, the pack, and Kai. I needed a fresh start, and this was it. I'll do it, I said with firm conviction. I won't let you down. Mr. Smith nodded, satisfied with my response. Good. I knew I could count on you. I left his office in a daze. It was more than just a job, it was the chance of a lifetime. Luna Andrea wasn't just a fashion icon, she was a political figure, a strategist, someone who shaped the future of the packs. And I was going to be right in the middle of it all. But as the excitement settled, reality crept. A new opportunity in. A year away from home, from the pack, and especially from Kai. Could I really leave it all behind? Could I leave him behind? The thought of Kai sent a familiar pang through my chest. I wasn't fully healed from our breakup. And Kai was still the same, busy with his alpha duties and Claire. Even after Ivar had confessed what he did, Kai hadn't acted. And now, an opportunity for my career has come. I could either stay behind, stuck in this endless cycle, or take this chance and build the life I had always dreamed of. The answer was clear. I had to go. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table, sipping tea and staring at the offer letter sent by Mr. Smith. The words exclusive assignment and potential editor promotion seemed to jump off the screen, taunting me with the promise of everything I had ever wanted. But the thought of leaving still lingered in the back of my mind. Would Kai even care? Would he even notice I was gone? I shook my head, frustrated with myself. This shouldn't be about Kai, but instead, it should be about me. One pulled out my phone and quickly texted my parents, telling them the news. I knew they'd be thrilled. My mom had always encouraged me to pursue my dreams, and this was what she had hoped for. As I waited for their reply, I couldn't help but think about how freeing this opportunity could be. A whole year away from the pack drama, away from the constant back and forth with Kai, and away from the suffocating expectations that had been weighing me down for so long. One could finally be my own person again. A notification popped on my phone, and it was my mom's text. "Nevia, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you. We have to celebrate before a new opportunity go." I smiled. My mom had always been my biggest supporter, and her excitement made me realize I made the right decision. I spent the next few days wrapping up my projects at work, packing my bags, and mentally preparing myself. But in the back of my mind, Kai kept nagging in my head. I hadn't told him, and honestly, I didn't feel like it because what difference would it make? And I had already made up my mind. A few days before my flight, I checked the group chats. Claire had been quiet, and it was odd. But I didn't mind. I decided to leave a message. "Guys, if you need something important from me, contact my parents. Thanks." I hit send and switched the group chat again to mute. I noticed a response to my message, but I just ignored it. I went to bed so excited about my upcoming morninga new opportunity flight. Final farewell, Nevia. The cafe door chimed as Claire walked in. I sat by the window, pretending to be engrossed in my phone, but I saw her. It was hard to ignore her presence, and even the men at the cafe turned to look at her. Claire let out her fake and sweet smile and aimed it at me. I sipped my coffee and prepared myself for whatever drama she would drop at me. Kai still hadn't reached out, and I didn't know why Claire called me earlier to meet up. "Nevia," Claire greeted, sliding into the chair opposite me. Her eyes were bright, but not in a friendly way. "Claire," I replied flatly. I put down my cup of coffee. I stared at Claire nonchalantly but didn't smile. "Final farewell," because I didn't pretend like her. She leaned forward, her perfume wafting over the table, and dropped her voice almost like a whisper. "I thought I should tell you something. Kai, he's still in love with me." Her words stabbed like a knife. Claire was waiting for some kind of reaction from me. She watched me closely, expecting me to break, cry, or at least argue. But these days I mastered not giving Claire that satisfaction. Kai and her were not worthy of my tears anymore. Instead, I raised an eyebrow and shrugged. "Good for you," I muttered and sipped my coffee. "But I don't care." Surprise flashed across her face and was satisfying in a way I didn't expect. Claire wasn't used to this. She thrived on drama, on pitting people against each other, especially when it came to Kai. She final farewell expected me to fight, claw, and scrape for his attention like before. But I'm done with that. I was leaving the pack. I had my own life, and Kai had made his choices. "You leaving, aren't you?" Claire asked. Her tone shifted, almost too casual, but I could sense the underlying smugness. "Yep," I replied and leaned on my chair. "I am. There's nothing left for me here." Her lips twitched in what she probably thought was a sympathetic smile, but it was more of a victory grin. "It's for the best, I suppose. Kai and I have always had this connection. It's something you could never understand." I leaned forward and met her gaze. "You can have him, Claire. Like I said, I don't care. He is not the only man in the world. I would rather chase my dream than waste my life for him." Final farewell, she chuckled softly. "Acting brave, Nevia. I am impressed. I know you are just leaving because you can't accept that Kai has chosen me. But it's a good decision, you know. I don't want you to break down and cry during our mating ceremony." I let out a mocking smile. "Good luck with pretending angel for the rest of your life. But we both know what kind of a bitch you are. And since you wasted my time, you pay for the coffee." I stood, grabbed my bag, and headed for the door without waiting for her reply. I felt like my heart was racing, but as I walked further, I felt lighter. She could have Kai if that's what she wanted. But I was choosing myself this time. The drive to my parents' house felt surreal. It had been a while since I'd seen them. The familiar scent of a home hit me as I opened the door. The smell of final farewell cinnamon, freshly baked bread, and the faintest hint of lavender from my mom's favorite cleaning spray enveloped the house. "Nevia, is that you?" Mom called from the kitchen. "Yeah, it's me," I replied, walking towards her. My mom wiped her face with an apron and smiled when she saw me, but with a hint of concern in her eyes. "It's been months," she said, pulling me into a tight hug. "Come, sit. We were just about to have dinner." I sat down at the table. My dad was already seated reading a newspaper. Then, he stopped and curiously looked at me when he put down the newspaper. "So, have you taken the offer already? Are you sure about your decision?" he asked as final farewell he poured himself some water. I smiled weakly. "Yes, Dad. I have already signed the contract. I would be leaving in 3 days." He smiled, but I could tell he was a little worried. My mom placed her hand over mine, her eyes studying me. "That's good news, honey. But what about Kai and you? Does he know? Have you discussed it with him? Aren't you planning for the mating ceremony? Mom asked. Kai cancelled the mating ceremony, Mom. We have split up. And so, I am definitely sure that this job would be good for me. Her eyes widened. I hadn't called them to inform them about what happened. I did not want them to worry. However, during that time, I debated going home to them or staying at my old apartment. I missed my mother's hug, but I was a big girl already. I needed to solve my own problems like an adult. Our final farewell. What happened? It's a long story, Mom. But to cut it simply, he had chosen someone else. They exchanged a look but didn't press further. They could tell that it was a sensitive issue for me. And they understand now why I took the job, but I could sense that they feel Kai and I aren't over yet. Well, we wish nothing but happiness for you, honey. And we will always be here whenever you need us. I stayed at my parents' house that night but had trouble sleeping. Around AM, Kai sent me a message on Instagram. I stared at my phone, trembling. He knew how to pick the perfect time to bother me, but I ignored it. It's too late, Kai. You had your chance. But now, it's just too late. Goodbye, Kai, I whispered and switched my phone in silent mode. The price of deception 43 Kai. I stood in front of Claire, arms crossed, my gaze hard as stone. She shifted nervously, her usual fake sweetness not working this time. I knew everything thanks to Ivar. He told me about her little meetup with Nevia, and it took everything in me to contain my rage. Why, Claire? Why would you go to her? Haven't you done enough already? I said, my voice was low but sharp. Claire looked down and bit her lip. I thought Nevia needed to know. She's leaving, and I thought if you want. I cut her off, my voice rising. Make her feel worse. Push her away even more. You've been playing games for too long, Claire. It needs to stop. The price of deception. She blinked, holding back tears. Kai, she's leaving you, and you still choose her. I've been here for you when she wasn't. Why is it always her? She doesn't love you anymore. Move on. I'm trying to help you. We can now be together without her bothering us. My jaw clenched. I'd tolerated Claire long enough, and her lack of accountability was infuriating. You not helping anyone but yourself. I'm done with your games. You'll be on cleaning duty for a month. No excuses. Her eyes widened in shock. Cleaning duty? But I can't do that. Your family promised you wouldn't. That's exactly what you do, I growled. Actions have consequences. You've been spoiled long enough. Next month, you're a cleaner. If you don't learn your lesson, the price of deception, it'll be extended. And stay out of my way if you don't want me to cast you out. She stared at me, speechless and humiliated. And without another word, I walked out. Ivar was waiting for me in the hall, raising an eyebrow as I approached. Everything good? He asked. I let out a frustrated sigh. She'll be scrubbing floors next month. Maybe that'll teach her to stop pulling these stunts. Ivar smirked. Harsh but fair. Claire needed a reality check. Nevia's leaving, I muttered, running a hand through my hair. I figured. She hinted at it in her last message. Did Claire confirm it? I nodded, panic creeping in. Yeah. Do you know where she's going? The price of deception? Not sure. I just saw Claire and Nevia at a cafe. Nevia stormed out in the middle of the conversation, furious. I could ask around, though. Who? I've tried everyone. My messages on Instagram are unread and no one in the pack knows anything. Ivar paused, then pulled out his phone. I know someone who works with Nevia. Let me make a call. After a few minutes, he returned with a smile. Idaho. Idaho. Why there? I asked curiously. She's covering a fashion event hosted by Luna Andrea from the Shadow Pack. She's leaving tomorrow. My jaw dropped and my heart raced. Tomorrow. I didn't have much time. I quickly used my connections to get on the same flight as her, packed my luggage, and the price of deception headed to the airport the following day. I didn't have a plan, but I couldn't let her leave without talking to me. I knew I couldn't approach her directly, not yet. She'd see me coming from a mile away. So, I disguised myself. I slapped on a scent patch to mask my scent and threw on a big hoodie to cover my face. I made sure I looked unrecognizable. It worked. I boarded the plane right behind Nevia and snagged the seat next to hers. She didn't even notice me. She was busy checking some movies on the flight entertainment system. The flight was smooth until turbulence hit. Nevia gripped the armrest and her body tense. Without thinking, I handed her a blanket to make her feel comfortable. You might need this, I said quietly. Her head whipped around, and her eyes widened in surprise. Kai, what the hell are you doing here? The price of deception. I wasn't going to let you leave without talking to me, I said, keeping my voice calm. Her eyes narrowed. You got some nerve. I know. but I had to do something. Just let me help you. She huffed and turned to the window, clearly irritated. I didn't push her further. I gave her space to process. When we landed, Nevia bolted from her seat and hurried into the crowd. I followed her, staying a few steps behind. The airport was packed, with people rushing in every direction, and I could tell she was getting frustrated trying to find her way. It was her first time to be in a different state. I can help, I offered with a smile, stepping beside her. She glared at me. I'm fine, the price of deception, but she wasn't. She was lost, and we both knew it. I remained by her side until she gave up and asked for help. Okay, then. Help me find the exit, Nevia muttered, almost shy. I smirked and led her to the exit and taxi stand. Thanks, she said quietly, her tone less angry. I loaded her luggage into the taxi and opened the door for her. She slid into the back seat, letting out a tired sigh. I joined her in the car, and she shot me a look. You don't have to come with me, she muttered. I'm not leaving you alone, Nevia. I'll do whatever it takes to make sure you're safe. She didn't respond. The car was already moving. Nevia sighed and just leaned her head against the window, looking the price of deception exhausted. I smiled with my small victory. When we reached her apartment, Nevia tried to shoo me away. I didn't listen to her. You are not going to listen to me, are you? Nevia said, frustrated. No, Nevia. I am not going to give up on you. Now shut up and let me check your apartment first before I leave. I left Nevia satisfied that she was safe. I went to the next building and booked a room. Tomorrow, I would start following her. I would not give up until we're back together. Fateful reunion. Nevia. The day of my big assignment had arrived. I would cover Luna Andrea's fashion show and the highlight of the season. It was supposed to be a career-defining moment, yet Kai was all I could think about. Since that day he dropped me to my apartment, he lingered in my mind despite my efforts to push him out. I shook my head, grabbed my bag, and headed out the door. Any personal drama had no place today. I had to do well today if I wanted to be an editor in the future. The venue was loud and filled with excitement. Models flitted between makeup stations and designers rushed to finalize their looks. I got swept with the moment because it was my first time attending such a huge event. I was impressed with all the designer clothes, the beauty of the models, and the dedication of Fateful reunion. Every designer. Nevia, Julie called out from the press area. She was balancing a camera and notepad. She was smiling, but I could see stress was etched all over her face. We've got a lot to do. This show is huge, and everyone's expecting something spectacular, she said with a hint of urgency. I nodded and forced a smile. I'll head backstage and get interviews with the designers. Let's make this quick. Otherwise, they will ignore us the moment the show starts. You real lifesaver. Julie flashed a grateful grin before diving back into what she was doing. Backstage was pure chaos. Clothes flew around, stylists barked orders, and models were being rushed from one station to the Fateful reunion next. I focused on my job, determined to ignore the nagging feeling that something was off. But my instincts wouldn't shut up. There was a heavy and unsettling sensation, as if I was being watched. I glanced around but saw nothing unusual, just the usual backstage frenzy. Focus, Nevia, I muttered, flipping my notepad. Interviews. That was my goal, not whatever weird vibes were creeping up on me. I had just wrapped up talking to one of the lead designers when the prickling on the back of my neck returned, and stronger this time. My pulse quickened and I scanned the room again. Nothing. Just busy workers, models, and photographers. Yet, I couldn't shake it off. Why did I feel this way? Was I going crazy because this feeling had been like this since I came to Idaho? Fateful Canyon. Then, a voice cut through the crowd and my thoughts. Nevin. My heart skipped. I turned, and there he was. Kai, standing just a few feet away, his face unreadable. But he still looked handsome as the first time I came to know he was my mate. What are you doing here? I blurted, struggling to keep my voice steady. He couldn't be here, not now, not in the middle of this. Kai took a step closer and his eyes scanned the room before looking at me. I had a feeling something was off. I've been gathering information and watching you. I stared at him with irritation bubbling up. Watching me? Are you serious, Kai? You don't need to follow me. I can take care of myself. Fateful reunion. You need me, he said firmly. There's danger here, Nevia. You being followed. My stomach twisted with those words. What? By whom? And why? Before he could answer, the lights suddenly dimmed. The show was starting, but the unease gnawing at me only grew stronger. Kai, stay close. We don't have match time, he interrupted, eyes narrowing while looking around. Suddenly, the backstage door swung open. A group of tall men walked in. They were too calm and coordinated to be considered as one of the event staff. My wolf instincts. screamed at me. Rogues. The backstage exploded into chaos. People screamed, models ran, and the intruders' fateful reunion closed in. I turned to flee, but one of the rogues was already reaching for me. And before I could react, Kai lunged. His wolf form erupted mid-leap, slamming into the rogue, and sending him crashing into a clothing rack. The noise was deafening, but I barely registered it. My mind raced as I stumbled backward, heart pounding. Kai's wolf growled. It was low and dangerous as he saw a rogue between me. His eyes gleamed with fury as the intruders circled him. But Kai wasn't the alpha for nothing. He attacked the nearest rogue, his jaws locking onto the man's shoulder. A sickening crunch echoed through the air as the rogue screamed. But Kai didn't stop. He moved like lightning and took down the second rogue easily. I watched in stunned silence as the two men lay unconscious on the floor. Kai stood over them, his eyes glowing. Slowly, he shifted back into his human form, chest fateful reunion heaving. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice rough, still thick with adrenaline. I nodded, though my legs felt like jelly. I think so. I'm sorry, Nevia. I didn't want you caught up in this. I know how much this job meant to you. I swallowed hard while listening to Kai. What the hell is going on, Kai? Why were they after me? Was it because of you? His jaw clenched and his eyes darkened in anger. There's more to this fashion show than you think. Luna Andrea was the target. They assumed you were connected and you almost looked like her. Which is why they are coming for you. I had to make sure you were safe. I blinked and tried to process whatever he fateful reunion was saying. But my head was still in a daze. So what now? Kai took a deep breath and his expression softened a bit. Now, we have to fight Nevia. Let's finish this together. I hesitated for a moment, overwhelmed by everything that had just happened. I didn't understand half of what he was talking about, but the look in his eyes told me one thing: he wasn't leaving my side. Okay, I whispered, stepping closer. Together. Battle for survival. Kai. The sound of tearing fabric and feral growls filled the entire stadium. The rogues' claws shredded designer clothes, bags, and anything they came across. Blood trickled from the gash on my leg, but the pain barely registered. I couldn't afford to stop. Nevia was still out there, fighting for her life. I staggered forward as each step was a battle. Every movement sent fire shooting through my injured leg, but I gritted my teeth, refusing to let it slow me down. Weakness wasn't an option now. Nevia, I shouted. She didn't answer. She was too busy fending off the rogue, trying to tear her apart. Her movements were still swift and deadly, but she was slowing down. Her punches and kicks still landed with battle for survival precision, but exhaustion was creeping in. Soon, she wouldn't be able to do it. But I wouldn't let her fall. Gripping my dagger tighter, I surged forward, targeting the nearest rogue. I was behind him, and he was focused on Nevia. My blade sank into his side before he even realized I was there. He let out a sharp howl and collapsed to the ground. I didn't waste time watching him fall. I turned, and my eyes locked on Nevia. The rogues kept coming, wave after wave. Their savage howls and snarls echoed in the torn-up remains of the event grounds. Even the Shadow Pack was having difficulty subduing them. And I knew we would soon be cornered. Behind you, I roared, spotting another rogue closing in fast. Nevia whirled just in time. She retaliated with a brutal kick to his knee. But she was extremely exhausted. We both were battle for survival. I went to her side and thrust my dagger at the next rogue that came for her. He was bigger and stronger, but I couldn't afford to lose. I slashed again, barely dodging his counterattack. His claws grazed my arm. You have to leave, Kai. Nevia shouted, panting as she fended off another attacker. I am not leaving, I growled, slashing at the rogue in front of me. He stumbled back, but I turned to face the next one. Nevia's eyes widened with the sight of the blood dripping down my arm, but there was no time to argue. The rogues were coming close. We were running out of room to hide, and the number of enemies only seemed to grow. A rogue lunged at Nevia, his claws aimed at her side. I saw it happen in slow motion, but I was too far and too slow to stop it. His claws tore through her side, and she cried out in pain. Hearing her scream made battle for survival. Something inside me snap. I roared and threw myself at the rogue, tackling him to the ground. We rolled through the dirt, and his claws ripped at my back as I pinned him down. I punched him hard in the face several times until his body went limp beneath me. But the moment I stood, the pain hit me hard. My side burned, and when I pressed my hand to it, so much blood dripped. Damn it, I muttered, my vision blurred for a second. Nevia rushed towards me, her face pale and full of sweat but determined. She grabbed my arm and pulled me toward a hidden corner. Kai, you re-hurt, she said, her voice strained. So are you, I shot back, stumbling as we moved. I'll heal, she muttered, though the battle for survival gash in her side said otherwise. Her face was tight with pain, but she kept moving and dragged me to hide. My chest ached with every breath and I could feel the blood still oozing from my wound. But I forced myself to stay conscious. We can't stay here, Nevia said as her eyes scanned the room. They're closing in. We need to get out of here. I shook my head. If we run, they 11 just follow. We need to take them down. She glanced at my bleeding side, her eyes flickering with doubt. You can barely stand, Kai. How do you expect to fight? I've had worse, I said with a weak grin, though the pain was making me battle for survival weak. Nevia didn't smile. Kai, we're outnumbered. You not thinking clearly. I'm not leaving you, I said, my voice hard and final. I meant it. There was no way I was abandoning her. Not after everything we'd been through. Before she could argue, a rogue had spotted us and he was eyeing Nevia, who was facing me. Instinct kicked in and I shoved Nevia behind me, raising my dagger to defend us. But I was too slow. My body was running on fumes and the rogue's claws sliced through the air faster than I could react. I braced myself for the impact, but it didn't come. Nevia launched herself at the rogue from behind, her claws outstretched. She tore battle for survival into him, her strength fueled by sheer will. With a feral growl, she knocked him off balance, but not before his claws raked down my chest. I gasped as pain ripped through me, collapsing to my knees. My hands went to my chest, trying to stem the bleeding, but the blood was pouring out too fast. Nevia, my voice came out as a hoarse whisper, barely audible over the chaos. Kai, she screamed and dropped beside me. Her hands pressed desperately against my wounds, and her face went pale and terrified. No, don't do this. Stay with me, I tried to speak, to tell her I was fine, but the darkness was closing in. My vision blurred and everything seemed to fade. Acre 16 battle for survival black. I could hear the rogues outside, but their snarls were growing distant and muffled like I was underwater. Nevia's face was the last thing I saw. Her wide and tear-filled eyes stared down at me as her hands tried to control the bleeding. Her voice was the last thing I heard. It was frantic and desperate, calling my name as the world slipped away. Second chance. Kai, waking up felt like clawing out of a thick fog, and each breath dragged me toward the surface. The pain was sharp and biting but tolerable enough. I blinked against the overhead lights and felt disoriented until I saw Nevia. She was sitting beside me, her face pale, eyes rimmed with exhaustion and concern, but she was here. She never left. You reawake, she whispered, her voice raw and strained from more than just fatigue. I tried to respond, but my throat was dry and my voice barely came out. Nevia, her hand trembled as she reached for mine. The touch of her soft and warm fingers pulled me into the present. Memories of the rogue attack came rushing. Second chance. Back, and I winced. I tried to sit up, but pain shot through my chest, forcing me back down. Stay still, idiot. You still healing, Nevia scolded, though her tone was gentle. A weak smile tugged at my lips despite the pain. I'm sorry, she shook her head quickly, cutting me off. No, Kai, you don't get to apologize. Not yet, she began, her grip tightening around my hand. There's too much we need to talk about, and I'm too tired to argue with you right now. I didn't need her to say more. I knew exactly what she meant. Nevia, my voice was rough, but I pushed through. I know it's been hell for you. Watching second chance me with Claire, getting neglected, and thinking I've been choosing her over you. Her eyes met mine. The hurt was still raw, but she stayed quiet and waited for me to explain. I need you to understand. It was never about love nor about me choosing her. Her brow furrowed with confusion, but I squeezed her hand to finish what I had to say. Claire's mom, she saved my mother's life once. There was a rogue attack on our pack before I was born, and Claire's mom threw herself in front of my mother. She died saving her. And my father, he never forgot that. His last order before he died was to keep Claire safe. Nevia's face softened, but I could still see the pain. I had kept this from her because I thought it would prevent her from jealousy. I didn't know what else to do, I second chance regrettably admitted. I thought honoring my father's last command was the right thing to do, and it was my duty to look after her. But it didn't feel right, did it? Nevia asked, and it hit me hard. No, it didn't, I answered, shaking my head. Claire took advantage of it. She manipulated me and made me feel like I owed her more than I did. She knew exactly how to get my attention and make me feel guilty for not being there for her. I was too blind to see it because she reminded me of what her mother did for my mom. Nevia looked away, her jaw tight as she tried to hold back tears. You let me think you had feelings for her, Kai. You let me stand there thinking I didn't matter. That she was more important. Second chance, I'm so sorry. I thought keeping it to myself was the right thing. I thought I was protecting you by not telling you, but I realize I've been a fool. Nivea, you've never been second. You've always been first. Always. Her eyes met mine again and a tear fell from her eye. It didn't feel like that when you cancelled our mating ceremony for her. The guilt crashed over me. I made a mistake. I thought Claire needed me. She faked the injury and I fell for it. I cancelled the ceremony because I thought it was my duty as alpha. But I was wrong. Claire manipulated me. Nivea's grip on my hand tightened and her knuckles went white. I knew it. I knew she was faking it and you didn't believe me. I didn't see it then, but I see it now. Second chance, she's not who I thought Claire was. She twisted everything, my father's order, my sense of duty, but it was never about love. Nivea, I don't love her. I never did. Maybe I did have a crush on her before, but it was just a crush during my teenage years. Her lips trembled, but she held herself together as she glanced at our joined hands. And now, what happens with Claire? I've already handled it, I said, my voice firm. She's not part of my life anymore, not in the way she was. I'll keep her safe because that's my responsibility, but that's it. She'll never come between us again. A part of me waited and braced for Nivea to say she didn't believe me. But slowly, I watched her relax, but doubt remained. I need you to believe me when I say that I second chance love you, Nivea. I've always loved you, and I've been an idiot for not showing it, for letting Claire come between us. I thought being alpha meant living up to everyone's expectations, but I'm done with that. I just want you, us. Her eyes softened and she leaned in closer, resting her forehead against mine. I want that too, Kai. But no more secrets. No more walls. You have to let me in. I promise. No more walls. For the first time, the heaviness between us lifted. So no more Claire. No more Claire, I confirmed with a smile. Only you. Only us. She smiled, the kind that reached her eyes and made everything feel right again. I loved that smile of her. Second chance, you re-stuck with me, you know that, she teased. I wouldn't have it any other way. We remained like that for a moment. I want us to finish what we started, Nivea broke the silence. I frowned slightly. What do you mean? Our mating ceremony. No more interruptions. No more excuses. We redoing this. You and me, forever. Absolutely, I responded with a grin. She is pregnant, my Alpha Series Raven. For weeks, I felt a pull I couldn't explain, something urging me to spy on Alpha Xavier. It didn't make sense, but tonight, I gave in. I found myself sneaking through the darkened halls, my heart pounding as I approached his office. I pressed myself against the cold stone wall with my senses heightened, picking up every sound. That's when her scent hit me. Celeste, the Beta's daughter who circled Alpha Xavier like a predator. My wolf stirred, but I shoved her back down. This wasn't the time to lose control. You don't need her anymore, Alpha, Celeste purred. She's weak. She'll never give you what I can. Weak? My nails dug into the stone wall. She is pregnant, my Alpha Series 2 scraping against the rough surface. Celeste, that snake, was trying to replace me. Alpha Xavier's voice was low and calm, but unmistakable. You rewrite. The pack needs an heir. You recarrying my child, and that's what matters now. I froze. His child. My blood ran cold as the meaning of his words sank in. The late nights, the distance, and the coldness weren't because of pack business. It was because of her. My chest tightened and I had to bite my lip from making a sound. Then, Celeste's smug laughter filled the room, ringing my ears like a victory bell. I knew you'd see it my way, she said triumphantly and chuckling. She's only holding you back, Alpha. Once the baby is born, the pack will accept me as Luna. They won't have a choice. I couldn't breathe. My grip on the stone tightened until my fingers throbbed, but she is pregnant, my Alpha Series 2 didn't care, I barely felt it. I stood beside Alpha Xavier as his Luna for 5 years. And now, because I hadn't given him a child, he was tossing me aside like I was nothing. I've made my choice, Alpha Xavier said coldly. That was it. He'd chosen Celeste. My body shook and I stumbled back, barely able to keep my feet moving as I ran away from the office. When I reached our cabin, I slammed the door and immediately collapsed onto the bed. Tears welled in my eyes, but I controlled them. I couldn't afford to be weak right now. My mind raced, trying to understand what I'd heard, but it all pointed to the same thing. Celeste had won. She was carrying his child, and was all that mattered to him. So, I cried. After several minutes, my tears dried up and birthed rage. Celeste might have his child, but that didn't make her Luna. That title was mine, and I had fought for it with She is Pregnant, my Alpha Series 2, everything I had. She couldn't just walk in and take it. Slowly, I pushed myself to stand in front of the mirror. I looked like a mess. My hair clung to my damp skin, my eyes swollen from crying, but there was a fire behind them. I paced the room, thinking. Confronting wouldn't help. Charging in full of rage would only give Celeste the satisfaction of seeing me break. No, I needed to be smarter. I needed a plan. A knock on the door snapped me out of my thoughts. My heart jumped when I saw Alpha Xavier open the door. Tonight, he came home early. He stood in the doorway, his face unreadable but his presence filled the room with tension. "What are you doing here? Didn't you say you must take care of something important? For the pack's business?" I demanded. Alpha Xavier didn't respond right away, and "She is pregnant, my Alpha Series 2 just closed the door. We need to talk." I crossed my arms over my chest and narrowed my eyes at him. "There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice." "What?" he said in surprise. I didn't respond but just looked at him. He closed his eyes as he realized I knew about his betrayal. Alpha Xavier stepped closer, and his eyes were so dark that I couldn't understand. "It's not that simple, Raven." I laughed. "It's actually that simple. You chose Celeste. Now you here to what? Explain. Justify it." His jaw tightened, trying to control his temper. But I knew he was pissed. "I didn't want it to happen like this. Is pregnant my Alpha Orion, then why did it?" Snapped. "You've been lying to me for months and now you expect me to just accept this." "Look, Raven, my parents had been hoping for grandchildren until they died, and we still haven't had at least one. The elders, the pack, all were asking when." I was about to argue with him when the door burst open. Celeste stormed into the room, annoyed to see me. I glared at her but she only smirked. "I knew you would be here, Alpha Xavier. You couldn't stay away from her, could you?" Celeste spat. Shattered Bond 42 Raven. Alpha Xavier's expression hardened as he turned to Celeste. "Now is not the time, Celeste. This is none of your business," Alpha Xavier said, irritated. Celeste's hand touched her stomach as if protectively cradling the life growing inside her. "It is now. You promised me, Alpha Xavier. Now is the time to tell her to end things." With her, I walked to her, my wolf fuming, desperate to take control, and ripped her to pieces. "Get out, Celeste. Now," I yelled. She only chuckled, with her eyes flicking between Alpha Xavier and me with satisfaction. "Shattered Bond or what? Please, Raven. It's over between you two. You're done being Luna. And soon, everyone will know and agree because Alpha Xavier and I will have a son." Before I could respond, a sharp pain shot through my side. I gasped, stumbling backward. My hand went to my stomach as the pain intensified. "Raven." Alpha Xavier's voice sounded distant, as if he was fading away. He rushed to my side and looked like he was yelling, but I could barely hear him. My vision blurred and my body convulsed from the pain. I hit the ground, and the last thing I saw was Celeste's triumphant smile before everything went black. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled my nose the moment I woke. I blinked against the harsh fluorescent light, disoriented. At first, I wasn't sure why I was at the PAX hospital. Then it hit me: Alpha Xavier, Celeste, their child. And a cold, hollow Shattered Bond ache formed in my chest, spreading through my body. I shot upright, ignoring the sharp ache in my abdomen. I felt panic when I touched my stomach, thinking I was wounded. But there was none. The memory of collapsing went back and made me ask what happened to me. The door creaked open and Sarah, the pack doctor, entered with her eyes widened when she saw me sitting up. "Luna Raven, you reawake," she said softly, moving to my bedside. "You need to rest." "How long have I been here?" I demanded. 2 days, she replied while checking my vitals. "You collapsed from shock." I scoffed with anger. "Shattered Bond, no, I collapsed because my mate decided to throw me away for a Beta's daughter." What I said didn't surprise her, but I could see pity in her eyes. "You need to take it easy. Your body's been through a lot." "I need to see Alpha Xavier," I interrupted, pushing the blankets aside and swinging my legs over the edge of the bed. My head spun, but I gripped the bed frame, forcing myself to stand. "Luna Raven, you can't." I ignored her, pulled on the thin robe beside my bed, and headed towards the door. I could still hear Sarah's protests, but they faded as I reached the hallway. The white walls closed around me, making the space feel suffocating. My thoughts whirled, but I managed to arrive at Alpha Xavier's office. My hand trembled when I reached for the door. Doubt crept into me, but I chose to ignore it. Shattered Bond 1 opened the door without knocking and went inside. Alpha Xavier sat behind his desk, his eyes dark and brooding as they met mine. He looked stoic, but there was a flicker of guilt. "Raven," he said, standing slowly. "Don T." I cut him off and glared. "Don't you dare act like you care." He moved around the desk, but I stepped back. I couldn't bear to be near him. "I'm sorry," he said with a rough voice. "This isn't how I wanted things to be." I let out a bitter laugh, folding my arms across my chest to keep from shaking. "Really? You didn't want things to be like this? You didn't want to betray me with a Beta's daughter who's carrying your child?" His jaw tightened, and his eyes flashed with anger. Shattered bond, I didn't have a choice, Raven. The pack needs an heir. You know that. I know the pack needs a Luna who can lead them. And last time I checked, that's still me. My words came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. I needed Alpha Xavier to understand how deep the betrayal cut. I'm not replacing you, he said, stepping closer. Celeste's pregnancy is just the beginning, Alpha Xavier, I interrupted, my voice shaking. She's already acting like she's taken my place. Do you honestly think this ends with her just giving you a child? She wants everything. He was silent, and his gaze dropped to the floor. I could see the conflict in his eyes, and the weight of his decisions pressed on him. But none of it mattered to me now. Shattered bond, I never wanted to hurt you, he whispered. But you did, I snapped. You broke everything we had, Alpha Xavier. You destroyed us. His silence only fueled my rage. I moved close to him, almost shaking. You've chosen her. Maybe not officially, not yet, but we both know where this is heading. He opened his mouth to respond, but a soft knock on the door interrupted him. We both turned as Celeste walked in again. Am I interrupting? She asked sweetly with a smirk. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to lunge at her. My wolf growled inside me, itching for a fight, but I held her back. Celeste, Xavier said, his tone colder now. Again, this isn't the time. Alpha Xavier, it is, she said, stepping Shattered bond further into the room. After all, we should be honest with each other, shouldn't we? Luna Raven deserves to know everything. We need to stop hiding my pregnancy. How many times should I tell you to get out? I hissed. She ignored me, her eyes glinting with satisfaction. You refighting a losing battle, Luna Raven. The pack already sees me as the future. Once the baby is born, no one will care about you anymore. That's enough, Celeste. Alpha Xavier ordered. Why are you protecting her? Celeste's voice was sharp, her eyes narrowing at Alpha Xavier. She's holding you back. The pack deserves better. You'll never be Luna, I spat. Shattered bond, you might be carrying his child, but you'll never be me. Her smile widened. You rewrite. I'll be better. Something inside me snapped, and I lunged at her. But Alpha Xavier caught me before I could reach her, pulling me back with a strength that sent me reeling. Raven, stop, he shouted, holding me tightly as I struggled against him. I froze, panting with rage, my eyes locked on Celeste still smiling. You pathetic. This pack will never follow someone as weak as you. You even collapsed by just knowing I was pregnant. Is that what you call strong? Celeste mocked. The word stung, but I forced myself to calm down, pulling away from Alpha Xavier's grip. Get out of my way, Xavier, I said coldly. Shattered bond, one could feel Alpha Xavier's eyes, but I refused to look at him nor to address and submit to him as Alpha. Raven, I said, move. I yelled. After a long pause, he finally stepped aside with an unreadable expression. And without another word, I stormed out of the room, my chest heaving with controlled anger. This wasn't over. I will make them pay. A pack divide. Raven, the tension in the pack was like a storm brewing. As I walked through the grounds, it was impossible to miss the hushed whispers and the sideways glances. They were already anticipating the change soon. I headed toward the training grounds. Warriors sparred, but all stopped when I passed. Whispers started to erupt, but they couldn't look straight at me and talk directly at me. Luna Raven, a voice called. I turned to see Connor, one of the warriors, leaning against the fence, a smirk tugging at his lips. Still hanging on, huh? I stopped but kept my voice steady. What's that supposed to mean? A pack divided. He shrugged and stepped forward with that same arrogant look. Just wondering how long you 11 be around, now that Celeste, you know. My wolf stirred, but I held her back. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. I've earned my place to earn that title. I'm not going anywhere. Connor chuckled, crossing his arms. This pack needs more than just loyalty, Luna Raven. It needs a future. Celeste's giving them that. His words hit like a slap, but I kept my voice cold. I've given them strength, leadership. What have you done? Loyalty only goes so far. Without an heir, what's left to secure the pack's future? Before I could respond, Luca, one of the councils, appeared, ending the pack divided confrontation. Connor, that's enough. Connor hesitated but nodded to Luca. He walked away but sneered at me. Luca turned to me and softly said, come on, walk with me. We silently walked toward the woods. Once we were deep in the trees, Luca looked around and then finally spoke. The pack's worried, Luna Raven. They're questioning things. They re-questioning me, I replied, hiding my frustration. Luca nodded. They're restless. They see the pregnancy and think it's what the pack needs, a guarantee. So they're ready to throw me aside because I haven't given them a child. It's not that simple. It's not personally a pack divided about you. It's about tradition, legacy. The pack wanted stability, and they see that in Celeste's child. So, everything I've done means nothing. It does matter, but you need to remind them of why you Luna. You can't let this consume you. You have to show them your strength. But I don't know how, I admitted, feeling a knot in my chest. Every day, they see her. The pregnancy was all they cared about. They are all excited about it. They care about more than that. Being Luna is more than giving the alpha an heir. Show them what they risking if they turn against you. His words hit home. I had been so consumed by Celeste's pregnancy that I'd forgotten my strength. I was among those who were a good strategist. A pack divided, you rewrite. I've been letting this control me. I had lost my focus. Luca gave a small nod. Good, because the pack needs you, whether they realize it or not. You just need to remind them, he said and smiled. As we walked back, the tension weighing on me started to ease. But as we reached the edge of the woods, a familiar scent of pine mixed with earth hit me. Alpha Xavier. I froze, spotting him talking to Celeste. They were standing close, their voices low, but I could hear fragments of their conversation as I approached. Stop worrying about her. Can't you see everything falling into place now? Celeste said softly but with confidence. Once the baby's here, things will be different. You'll see that it was the best decision you ever made because the pack divided would be happy. After all, like you said, the pack is the most important. And you will forget about Raven. You could cast her away easily because she will not be useful to you. Alpha Xavier's voice was quieter, but there was tension in it. It's not that simple, Celeste. Raven is my mate. She had supported me and the pack for 5 years. She is in pain, and I understood that. But I cannot just abandon her. She is still part of the pack. Celeste stepped closer, her hand brushing his arm. For the pack. For our child. It's the right thing to do, even if it's harsh for her. She is just one person, Alpha Xavier. What is losing one against losing the entire pack? I stopped, and my heart pounded. They hadn't seen me, but their words cut deep. I turned and walked away before the pack divided could notice me. Luca rushed after me, preventing another confrontation. Now's not the time to confront them, he warned quietly. I know, I muttered, my mind racing. But it didn't mean I would stand back and let Celeste take everything. As we neared the pack house, a plan started forming. But as I reached the steps, something or someone caught my eye. A figure stepped out of the shadows, watching me closely. It was Cassandra, one of the pack's healers. Luna Raven, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. I slowed, confusion creeping in. Cassandra. What is it? Cassandra didn't respond. She was a shy girl but an excellent healer. She easily learned anything that you teach her. However, because of her shyness and a pack-divided jealousy of others, she often gets bullied. Do you need help, Cassandra? I asked, concerned. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were sharp and focused. She seemed upset and sad. We need to talk. There was something in her tone that made my heart race. I glanced around to make sure no one was nearby. Luca had left, and we were the only ones left. What is it? I asked again, keeping my voice steady despite the growing unease. She stepped closer, her voice dropping lower. It's about Celeste. There's something you need to know. My blood ran cold. What? I whispered, my heart pounding as dread settled in. Fake pregnancy. Raven, start from the beginning, Cassandra. I need to know everything, I said after we reached the healer's quarters. Cassandra searched around to ensure no one was there eavesdropping. Luna Raven, she forced me. Celeste said she'd spread rumors and turn the pack against me if I didn't help her. I furrowed and took a deep breath to calm my nerves. Help her with what exactly? Tell me, Cassandra. Don't be afraid. I will protect you. Cassandra owed, her voice barely a whisper. It was the herbs, Luna. She asked me for a blend of herbs. Urztella makes her scent irresistible to an alpha when she's in fake pregnancy heat, and Falsiflora mimics pregnancy. I tried to refuse, but she wouldn't take no for an answer. I didn't know what she'd do with them until she threatened me. Indeed, Celeste was that kind of woman. She was desperate for power and would do anything. Alpha Xavier used to hate her hovering around him, so it shocked me when he got her pregnant. My heart pounded when I asked, is there a possibility that she could get pregnant? Cassandra's eyes widened with the thought, and she felt it was her fault. I reached for her hand to calm her. Hey, if she is, it wasn't your fault. I just wanted to know if there is. I don't want to go accusing her when she is indeed pregnant. Cassandra took a deep breath before responding. There is. She paused. Fake pregnancy. My heart broke when she confirmed what I thought. But it's impossible. My eyebrows furrowed. Look, Luna Raven. If you take both herbs together, she won't get pregnant at all. The mix contradicts each other and would even kill a baby if a female is already pregnant. It has to be taken separately and strictly follow the instructions on how to take it. Otherwise, they don't work. When did you give her the herbs? Which one you hand first? I gave Ursula 3 months ago. She has to take it 3 times a day, 2 days before she goes in heat. But Cassandra's eyes furrowed, looking like she was trying to remember every detail. Ursula is a powerful herb if taken correctly. A day after a female mated should know already that she was fake pregnancy pregnant. However, I remember her returning a week after I had given it to her. Celeste came annoyed and said she made a mistake, so it didn't work. She wanted Ursula again, but I no longer have it. There was one ingredient that grew only every 6 months. And so, she was forced to take Falsiflora. I'm sure, Luna Raven, Celeste is not pregnant. A dark, seething anger pulsed through me. And so that bitch was parading around, flaunting a fake pregnancy just to get my position in the pack. Cassandra took a step back, eyes wide. Luna, please, I didn't have a choice. She said she'd make sure I was banished, that the pack would believe I poisoned her. I exhaled sharply, fighting the rage in my chest. I understand, Cassandra. But for now, this stays between us. No one else can fake pregnancy until I'm ready to expose her. If Celeste realizes we know, she'll twist this against us. Cassandra nodded, eyes wide with both relief and terror. Thank you, Luna. I didn't mean to betray you. With a slight nod, I left her standing there, her shoulders slumped in relief. My mind was whirling, thinking of how to expose Celeste as I went back to the cabin. I couldn't confront Celeste without any evidence. And there was only one person who could help me, Alpha Xavier. The thought of facing Alpha Xavier made my stomach turn. His betrayal still cut deep, a wound I'd barely had time to process. But he was also a victim of Celeste's scheme, so he deserved to know the truth too. I found him alone in his office, signing some papers. I knocked and his gaze lifted fake pregnancy to meet mine. Raven, I didn't expect you here, he said. We need to talk, Alpha Xavier, I responded, ignoring the pang in my chest. He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. If this is about Celeste again, I don't think it is, I said firmly. But not in the way you think. He arched an eyebrow out of curiosity. Tell me honestly, Alpha Xavier. Do you know anything about the herbs Celeste has been taking? He frowned. What are you talking about? She's carrying my child. I assume she's only aching what's needed. You assume too much. Have you even fake pregnancy questioned any of this, or are you so blinded by your need for an heir that you'll accept anything she says? What are you getting at, Raven? Celeste isn't pregnant, Alpha Xavier. She's faking it. That's impossible. Celeste has all the symptoms: nausea, fatigue, cravings, bloated stomach, he stammered in disbelief. All symptoms that can be faked. She's been using a mix of herbs to make herself appear pregnant. Ask Cassandra if you doubt me. She helped her. He stared at me, shock flickering into anger. You re-saying Celeste would go to such lengths to deceive me? To deceive the pack, yes. To secure her place. She thinks. Bring your child, will make her Luna fake pregnancy. This was never about you, Alpha Xavier. It was about power, and you handed it to her on a silver platter. Raven, if I found out you are lying just to get back at me, I would really strip you of your title and banish you. I know I hurt you, but lying to me is still punishable. Rage boiled inside me, but I lifted my chin high. You always get the last say, huh? After you hurt me, I still deserve to get punished, and you don't deserve any of that. But whatever, Alpha Xavier sighed and replied, look, I'm sorry, but I can't lose my heir. Of course. Now, let's get this over with. Call Cassandra. Unveiling the truth, Raven. A hesitant knock broke the tense silence in Alpha Xavier's office, and Cassandra stepped in. Her shoulders slumped as though the weight of her confession had drained her. She glanced between Alpha Xavier and me, her hands trembling slightly, before finally settling her gaze on him. Alpha Xavier, she greeted, her voice barely steady as she nodded respectfully. You asked for me. Alpha Xavier's narrowed eyes betrayed a hint of impatience. His voice was controlled but sharp with authority. Cassandra, he began. Luna Raven tells me you have information about Celeste. Is this true? Cassandra swallowed, giving me a fleeting unveiling the truth look, almost as if seeking reassurance. Yes, Alpha, she whispered. It's true. And I should have told you sooner. Alpha Xavier's jaw tightened. Go on. Tell me everything. And I mean everything. Cassandra took a shaky breath, her fingers twisting in her dress. It started a few months ago. Celeste came to me asking for certain herbs. She said they were for her health, to help her conceive. I didn't think much of it at first, but she came back, demanding herbs with effects that could mimic pregnancy. She paused, glancing nervously at Alpha Xavier before continuing. Urztella and Falsiflora. Alpha Xavier's face grew rigid, his jaw clenched as he absorbed the information, but he remained silent. Cassandra, quickly unveiling the truth, explained that she had initially refused, only for Celeste to persist, making threats if she didn't cooperate. She threatened you? Alpha Xavier's voice was low, simmering with anger. Cassandra nodded, her face paling as she glanced away. Yes. She told me she'd say I'd tried to harm her if I didn't comply. I didn't know what to do. She made me believe she was close enough to you to turn everyone against me if I didn't give her what she wanted. Alpha Xavier's fists clenched at his sides, his gaze dark and cold. So Celeste lied to the entire pack. She pretended to carry my child to gain power. Yes, Alpha, Cassandra replied softly. I should have come forward sooner, that I was afraid. I thought if she could lie unveiling the truth about this, she'd have no problem turning the pack against me. Alpha Xavier studied her for a moment and then he nodded. Thank you for coming forward now. You re-dismissed. With a final, regretful glance at me, Cassandra turned and left. Alpha Xavier's face was unreadable, but his clenched fists and the tightening of his jaw betrayed his fury. This was something I should have seen, he muttered. He straightened, inhaling deeply before turning to a guard stationed at the door. Summon Celeste, he commanded. Tell her to come here immediately. The guard nodded and left quickly. I felt a urge of grim satisfaction. Celeste's deception was about to be exposed. Unveiling the truth, after a few minutes, the door opened and Celeste entered. She smiled beautifully and confidently but faltered when she saw me. Celeste quickly composed herself and strode forward with her head held high. Alpha Xavier, she greeted him. Is something wrong? I wasn't expecting to be called here so urgently. Alpha Xavier's eyes narrowed as he studied her. Celeste, when was the last time you had a prenatal check? He asked. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Celeste's eyes, but she quickly masked it with a laugh, shaking her head. A prenatal check? Alpha Xavier, surely you don't doubt me. I mean, look at me and my stomach is growing. I am starting to show. Her tone was light, but I saw the faint tension around her eyes. Unveiling the truth, answer the question. Celeste, he said, his voice low and commanding. When did you last see a healer? Celeste's smile tightened, but she managed to keep her expression composed. Alpha, there hasn't been a need. I'm perfectly fine. I wanted to wait until later, when we could find out the gender. Later? Alpha Xavier hissed in disbelief. Celeste, you re-carrying the supposed heir of this pack and my child. You should have had a healer's check immediately. Celeste's expression shifted, but she forced another laugh. Oh, Alpha, I simply didn't want to make a fuss. I thought it would be best to keep things private to avoid drawing unnecessary attention. Private? Alpha Xavier's voice was sharper now. You thought keeping a pregnancy hidden, unveiling the truth from the pack was best. I only wanted to protect the child, Alpha. I was thinking of our safety. I thought the fewer people who knew, the safer we would be. Alpha Xavier's brows drew together. He looked irritated and didn't want to listen to all of Celeste's excuses. So you hid your pregnancy to protect it. Do you hear how ridiculous that sounds? And as far as I remember, you were too excited to tell everyone that you were carrying my child. Why the change of opinion? Celeste's confidence cracked slightly, but she quickly composed herself, her voice growing defensive. Alpha, I'm only thinking of the well-being of our future. I didn't see the need for an immediate check when everything was fine. Then you'll have no problem going unveiling the truth through with an examination now, will you? Uncertainty flashed in her eyes, but Celeste quickly swallowed it and lifted her chin. Of course, Alpha Xavier. I have nothing to hide. I am more than willing to undergo an examination. Good. Because you're going to have it done now. I've already summoned the head healer, and she will examine you to confirm your pregnancy. Celeste's composure wavered, but she forced a smile. That's perfectly fine. I've always been honest with you, Alpha. I have nothing to hide. He watched her before glancing to the door, where the healer Ilara had just arrived. Ilara, Celeste will undergo a full prenatal examination. I want you to, unveiling the truth, confirm her condition now. Ilara gave a slight bow. As you wish, Alpha Xavier. She turned to Celeste, her voice soft but professional. If you come with me, we proceed to the examination room. Celeste straightened, giving Alpha Xavier one last, unwavering look before following Ilara. Celeste is pregnant. Raven. It had been 2 days since Ilara had taken Celeste for the pregnancy test. Finally, we were about to know whether Celeste's claims were real or a scheme. Alpha Xavier had ordered the result to be publicly announced. He had taken this opportunity to inform everyone and prevent false rumors from spreading. But tension filled the council room as everyone gathered, eager yet dreading what was to come. Alpha Xavier sat at the head of the table, his face impassive but shadowed with exhaustion. He hadn't been sleeping and buried himself with work these past 2 days. Alpha Xavier scanned the room, looking at each member present with an unreadable gaze, but when he looked at me, I saw something I couldn't quite place: regret, maybe, or fear. He hadn't spoken to me, but Celeste is pregnant. I also didn't want to talk to him. Across from him, Celeste sat with a faint, serene smile and hands folded on her lap as if she already knew the answer. Her gaze darted between Alpha Xavier and me with an unmistakable smugness. I refused to look away. Celeste would not see me break, regardless of the result. The door finally opened and Alara entered, holding a thin folder. She glanced at Alpha Xavier with a respectful nod and stood beside him. The room fell silent as every gaze locked onto the slim folder she held. "Thank you for your patience," Alara began calmly. "2 days ago, I conducted a full examination on Celeste. Today, I have the results." Alpha Xavier gave a sharp nod. "Proceed." "As you know, the examination required Celeste is pregnant me to be thorough, covering all early pregnancy symptoms and additional tests due to the herbs involved." Alara continued. Their eyes briefly settled on Cassandra, whose face had turned pale. I hadn't spoken to Cassandra, but I could tell she hadn't stopped blaming herself, and it was eating her inside. As for Celeste, she barely flinched. She kept her gaze on Alara, but her fingers twitched slightly. Alara flipped the folder and read the result. Given the complexity of the herbs involved, I took extra precautions to confirm each symptom. The examination was exhaustive. "And?" Alpha Xavier asked. "This pregnancy impacts more than just the individuals involved. It concerns the pack's legacy and leadership, so accuracy here was essential." Almost all skilled healers had assisted to ensure we took the Celeste is pregnant test properly and provided the correct result. "Spare us the suspense, please," Celeste interjected, a tight smile on her lips. She placed a protective hand over her stomach and shot me a smirk. "You see, Alpha, I told you. All I said was true." "Hold your excitement," I muttered, unable to hold myself. Celeste turned and smiled coldly at me. "Jealousy isn't a good look for you, Luna Raven. Some of us were meant to lead. Others are just placeholders." "Is that so?" I shot back. "Then keep quiet and let Alara do her job if you re so confident." Celeste's face stiffened, though she quickly masked it with another smug smile. "Celeste is pregnant. I have nothing to hide. Soon, everyone here will know I am carrying Alpha Xavier's heir, and I deserve that utmost care and recognition." Alpha Xavier's jaw clenched and his eyes shifted between us. He had kept silent until now, but I could see his patience running out. "Enough. Celeste, Raven, both of you. Let Alara finish." Celeste leaned back but cast a triumphant glance in my direction. "As you wish, Alpha." I swallowed my frustration and bit back a retort. This wasn't the time to argue. Alara refocused on the folder, flipping through pages as she resumed talking. I wondered why she seemed to keep beating around the bush. It was as if she didn't want to announce the result, so she kept letting Celeste interrupt her. But I didn't say anything because the result was more Celeste is pregnant important than her way of delivering it. The herbs Cassandra provided required us to run 20 different kinds of tests to ensure that it wasn't the reason why Celeste was showing the symptoms. This is why it took 2 days to confirm the result. I never thought it would go this far," Cassandra whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean for any of this." "Oh, please," Celeste cut in and rolled her eyes. "You did as you were asked, Cassandra. Stop acting like you were forced. I didn't know what you'd use the herbs for. You threatened me, Celeste. I didn't have a choice. A healer's duty is to assist the Alpha's needs. And the Alpha needs an heir, doesn't he?" Alpha Xavier's eyes darkened, his hands curled into fists, and he hit the table. "Celeste is pregnant." 41 Celeste, that's enough. This is not about loyalty. This is to confirm your pregnancy and to be well cared for the entire pregnancy. If you are pregnant, it is a must for you to have the healer check you and not miss any prenatal checks. I would ensure that you follow the healer's advice. Celeste leaned back, Noah victorious. Glance around the room as if she had already won. "Of course, Alpha." I clenched my fists, forcing myself to remain silent, but the frustration clawed at me. "We reviewed every physical indicator and double-checked the timeline," Alara continued. "All this build-up for what? Just please say it already, Alara," Celeste muttered impatiently. "This isn't just about you, Celeste. This Celeste is pregnant concerns the Alpha's lineage and the future of this pack. Let's hear it, Alara." Now, Alpha Xavier demanded to stop the suspense and the tension. Alara straightened, her gaze moving over each of us before she finally settled her attention on Alpha Xavier. The room grew silent. Cassandra seemed to shrink into her chair, her face drawn and pale. I wanted to hold her and reassure her that it wasn't her fault. Even Celeste looked tense, her fingers gripping the table's edge. Then Alara closed the folder and met Alpha Xavier's intense stare. Celeste is, indeed, pregnant. Cast out 41 Raven. I stood in the council room, hearing low murmurs of accusation. The council members' gazes bore into me a mixture of disappointment, anger, and contempt. How did it come to this? After loyalty, I was now the one they doubted. Years of Luna Raven, Elder Malik's steady voice cut through the murmur. We have called this meeting because your recent actions have disrupted the stability of our pack. I held my ground, fighting the urge to snap back. I'm only doing what's right for this pack. If I'm questioning Celeste, it's because I have reason to believe she's lying about her pregnancy, I said firmly. A ripple went through the council cast-out members, some of them shaking their heads, frowning in disapproval. Elder Yasmin stepped forward, her icy gaze meeting mine. So you accuse the woman carrying the Alpha's child, she demanded. I doubt that Celeste is carrying Alpha Xavier's child. And yes, I accuse her of lying to all of you. Blinded by jealousy, Yasmin sneered. Celeste represents a future for this pack, a future you failed to secure. You re-threatened because she's given Alpha Xavier something you never could, an heir. I felt my fists tighten further, but I held her gaze, refusing to waver. You think I'd lie to all of you just because I'm jealous? You've known me for years. I've stood by Alpha Xavier through everything. I am his Luna. I would never put my pride before this pack's cast-out well-being. The council exchanged glances. They had known me, or at least I thought they had. But because of Celeste's deception, I became the villain. Luna Raven, the pack again, sees Celeste as the future. They believe in the promise of an heir. You should be supporting that future, not sowing doubts, Elder Malik said calmly. That's exactly what Celeste wants you to believe. She's manipulating everyone, including you. Malik's gaze hardened. The council stands with the Alpha's decision. Your accusations are not only unfounded but damaging to the pack's auntie. Do you truly wish to bring chaos up in us all for personal grievances? You all fools. Celeste's entire pregnancy is a fabrication, and the only chaos here is that you so willing to let cast out her replace me without question. The door creaked open and the council's attention shifted. Cassandra stood there pale, but her eyes glinted with determination. Elders, Cassandra said, her voice shaking. I need to speak. I believe Luna Raven is right. Elder Yasmin's expression turned cold and she practically hissed. And what basis do you have for such a claim, Cassandra? Didn't Alara and her team of skilled healers confirm that Celeste is pregnant? Cassandra glanced at me and I gave her a small nod, urging her to continue. Her heart trembled slightly as she stepped forward. Celeste, she's done something to the test. I believe the results were tampered with. Cast out Malik raised a brow, unimpressed. Tampered with? What is that supposed to mean, Cassandra? The fact that Celeste came for the herbs and I was told to keep quiet was an indication that she had a hidden agenda. She must have done something that caused the results to be tampered with. She wouldn't let herself get caught. You re-accusing her of deceiving Alara as well? Yasmin demanded. No, I'm saying that she set up the healers. There are ways to use these herbs that would result in false positives even if she wasn't truly pregnant. I suspect she dosed herself right before the test. Celeste's symptoms, as far as I can tell, could very well be fabricated. Cassandra, are you aware of the punishment of your accusation? These are skilled healers we're talking about. If Celeste deceived them, it would mean and cast out elaborate scheme. Yes, and that's exactly what I believe it is, a scheme. A calculated attempt to secure a position. I felt anger surge within me. Do you think she's lying? Cassandra has put herself at risk, knowing that telling the truth might mean the end of her role in this pack. She's risked her place here to show you the truth. Malik shot me a cold look. Watch your words, Luna Raven. Or what? You'll believe Celeste, a woman who has barely proven herself over me. The door opened again, and all eyes turned as Alpha Xavier entered the room. Alpha Xavier, tell them I would never lie to you. He stepped forward, eyes fixed on mine. Cast out, but his face hardened. This has gone far enough, Raven, he said. What do you mean? 41 The pack's unity is shaky right now. Your accusations, whether you believe them or not, are creating a rift we can't afford. We need stability, and you undermining that. You think this is my fault? Alpha Xavier's silence was deafening. His eyes stayed fixed on me, but he didn't believe me. So you recasting me aside for a woman who's lied to you. Raven, this isn't about us. It's about the pack. Don't pretend this is about the pack. I shouted. This is about your pride, your need for an cast out heir. You letting that blind you to the truth. Enough. You leave me no choice. What are you saying? Elder Malik spoke, his tone cold. Luna Raven, by the authority of the Alpha and the Council, you are hereby stripped of your title and cast from this pack. You are no longer one of us. I stared at them, barely able to comprehend. I looked at Alpha Xavier, searching for any hint of regret, but nothing. You throw me out like I am nothing. You gave me no choice, Alpha Xavier said coldly. I turned toward the door, refusing to let them see my tears. Cassandra hurried to follow me. Cast out Luna Raven. I didn't know it would end like this, she whispered. I forced a sad smile. It's not your fault, Cassandra. She squeezed my hand. What will you do? I looked back, taking in the faces of those who turned their backs on me. This isn't over, I vowed and left. Tampered test. Xavier Raven's last look lingered in my mind. I'd immediately cast her out to protect the pack, but it didn't feel right. Since the council meeting, whispers of discontent had spread among the warriors and elders. Alpha Samuel, one of my most trusted warriors, appeared in the doorway. What is it? I snapped. There's something you should see, Alpha. Elara and Celeste are in the healer's quarters arguing. My eyebrows furrowed. I rose immediately. Celeste was pregnant, and I had to ensure the safety of the baby. She had a reputation for ignoring any healer's advice. She was probably arguing with them right now for something petty. But when it comes to my child, Celeste must obey them no matter what. She needed to be as healthy as Tampered test possible to carry and deliver the baby without complications. Samuel followed me as I made my way to the hall, to the healer's quarters. And as I approached the door, I could hear voices. We looked at each other but didn't say a word. You promised me, Elara. Celeste hissed. You swore you would handle everything. I stopped at the doorway. I held a hand to Samuel, gesturing for him to stay silent as I listened. Elara, listen to me, Celeste continued with desperation. You owe my family. My father helped you when no one else would. Do you really want to go against me now? But this isn't right, Celeste. I tampered with the test as you asked, but Raven's accusations created suspicion. Ibic Tampered test can't keep lying. My stomach twisted, but I remained silent to hear everything. Raven's gone now. She's the only one who would dare to question us. As long as you stay quiet, this will blow over. No one questions the pack's most trusted healer. We just need to look for a baby to adopt later, and everything will be fine. A heavy silence followed, then Elara's defeated whisper, I still think this will end badly. Then do as I say, Celeste snapped. You've already taken this risk. Backing out now will ruin you. I snapped and I stepped inside unannounced. Both women froze, and their eyes widened in surprise. What's this about a tampered test? I demanded. Elara's face turned pale, her gaze. Tampered test dropped, and her body trembled. Alpha Xavier, I didn't know you were. Answer me. I roared. Elara swallowed hard. Celeste asked me to alter her test results, Alpha. She said it was important for the pack's stability. Her family helped me once, a long time ago, and she made it clear that I owed her. Because of that, it was hard for me to say no to her. You both lied to me and the entire pack. Celeste's expression shifted from surprise to a stubborn defiance. And what does it matter, Alpha Xavier? I gave you what you wanted, a future, stability, and heir. Raven was standing in the way of that. I did this for you, for all of us. That's not your choice to make, I Tampered test growled. Raven was right, and I refused to believe her because I thought having an heir was more important. But I did this for you, for the pack. Can't you see? You needed someone who could give you what Raven couldn't. You were willing to let her go for that, and you know it. I felt anger surging through me. You don't get to twist this around, Celeste. Because of your lie, you jeopardized everything I've worked for, everything the pack stands for. I turned to Elara, who was still cowering near the wall. I'm so sorry, Alpha. I only did what she asked. She threatened me. You betrayed your role, Elara. There's no excuse for that. All Elara could do was nod and remain Tampered test silent. Elara, you can stay with the pack, but you will go to the elders tomorrow for a trial. Your reputation will be reviewed, and your duties will be reassigned. And whatever punishment they would give you, you will not question it. Thank you, Alpha Xavier. I'm so sorry, Elara replied with her head down. I turned to glare at Celeste. I was so furious that I could punch her in the face, but I managed to control myself. An alpha shouldn't hit a woman regardless of what she did. As for you, Celeste, you're no longer welcome here. I expect you to leave by nightfall. Do not ask for any protection from me or the pack. And don't ever come back. Celeste's face paled with worry. Alpha Xavier, please, you can't mean that. Everything I did for you, for the Tampered test pack. You didn't do this for anyone but yourself. This was about your ambition, your hunger for power, and it ends now. Make sure Celeste packs her things and leaves by sundown, I ordered Samuel. I turned and left. Celeste's desperate pleas trailed behind me, but I ignored it. I could no longer stomach her presence. I wanted her gone. I sank into my chair at my office, and my head felt like exploding. I'd been so blind, so desperate for an heir, that I'd let myself get swayed by the promise of one. And now Raven, my mate and the woman I love, was gone. The door opened and Samuel stepped in, looking hesitant. Alpha, is there anything else you need me to do? Do you have any idea where Raven could Tampered test be? I asked, hoping he might have seen her on the day she left. No one saw her that night she left. Even Cassandra didn't know where she had gone. She doesn't have any relatives or friends outside the pack. She was on her own. I sighed, but I would not lose hope that I would see Raven again. Gather a search team with the most efficient warriors. We leaving at first light, I ordered softly. Samuel's eyebrows arched and asked, where are we headed, Alpha? To find Raven and bring her home. The search 41 Xavier. The dense forest surrounded us. Samuel, 2 other warriors and I tracked the underbrush, searching for any sign of Raven. My heart hammered with guilt, dread, and desperation I hadn't felt in years. I had pushed Raven away, so I must bring her back. Alpha, Samuel's voice broke the silence. Do you think she'll come back with us? After everything that happened, I slowed my pace and frowned. I don't know, I admitted, but I'll do whatever it takes to bring her home. We followed Raven's scent. The trail was faint, nearly wiped out by last night's storm, but it was there. Her subtle scent. The search lingered beneath the damp earth. Suddenly, Samuel caught a stronger trace of her scent. Alpha, I think her trail leads this way. I nodded and rushed to his side, and the other 2 warriors followed me. We moved together, searching every corner, every bush, and every break in the trees. But there was still no sign of Raven. When we reached a small clearing, Gregory walked to my side. He walked straight ahead and gathered the courage to say, you know, Alpha Xavier, I never agreed with how the council handled everything with Luna Raven. I stopped, turning to study his face. His eyes were honest and I realized, like Rave, he had doubted Celeste's claims. Then why didn't you speak up, Gregory? I asked softly. Gregory lowered his gaze to the ground. He looked like he was scared to offend Meth Search. You were determined, Alpha. Celeste's promise of an heir, it was convincing, and the council backed you. But he paused, thinking whether it was right for him to speak his mind. Seeing Luna Raven suffer, seeing her thrown aside for someone like Celeste, it didn't sit right with me. I felt a pang of shame. I should have seen it myself. Celeste knew exactly how to play on my need to protect the pack. Gregory nodded, seeming grateful for my admission. He went silent, and we continued to follow the trail. I picked her scent, and it led to the abandoned outpost, a small stone structure left from my father's reign. The sight of it stirred memories of endless days of training with Raven and the other young wolves. The scent is strongest here, Alpha, Samuel said as he pointed toward the search structure. I held up a hand and ordered them, wait here. As I approached, a shadow appeared near the edge of the trees. My heart lurched and I recognized her immediately. Raven stood with her back to me, tense and still. She was quiet and focused, as if gathering strength from the solitude around her. Raven, I called softly. She turned slowly and met my eyes. Raven looked angry, betrayed, and full of hate. Her warmth and loving aura disappeared. Alpha Xavier, why are you here? Raven asked coldly. I took a hesitant step forward. I wanted to hold her to ease her pain, but I knew Raven would hate it even more. I came to bring you back. I was wrong, Raven. I never should have doubted you. A humorless laugh escaped her, her arms the search folding across her chest as she leaned back against the stone wall. You think it's that simple? You threw me out and turned everyone against me. And now you here, expecting me to come back. I don't expect anything, Raven, I replied. I just want a chance to make this right. Celeste deceived me and played on my need for an heir. But I know the truth now. I am making amends. I would do whatever it takes to bring you back. Just tell me what to do. She scoffed and looked away. Whatever it takes. Alpha Xavier, you didn't just doubt me. You stripped me of my tie, threw me out, and let that snake make me a pariah. Why should I trust you now? I took another step closer, determined to gain her trust. The search, because I'll prove it to you. I know words don't make up for what I did, but I'll show you every day for as long as it takes. Come back, and I swear I'll make things right. If I come back, you'll tell the council the truth. You'll tear down every lie Celeste said just to be a Luna. You'll clear Cassandra's name and mine. And if you ever doubt me again, if it happens again, there won't be another chance, Alpha. I'll leave and never look back. I nodded and swallowed the lump in my throat. I'll tell the council everything. I'll face whatever backlash. And I'll see that you restored as Luna. Celeste is gone, she won't be able to hurt you again. Raven's face softened. She studied my face, searching for any hint of a lie to what I just said. And then, finally, she gave a curt nod. The search, all right, Alpha Xavier. But I still don't trust you. Not now. I understand. You have my word. For the first time in weeks, the tension between us eased. Raven looked away and headed towards the trail going back to the pack grounds. I signaled for the others to follow, and then we were on my way back home. A weight had lifted on my chest, and I was able to breathe. As we entered the clearing near the pack's border, the silence was broken by the murmurs from the warriors we passed. Their eyes widened when they saw Raven was with me. I looked at Raven. I was worried that it might upset her to see them like that. But her chin lifted, her gaze steady, meeting their stares head on. She was indeed the Luna that she ought to be. Before we could even reach the pack house, Elder Malik stepped outside to meet us. His eyes furrowed in confusion, and glared at Raven. We stopped in front of the search him, and he asked, Alpha Xavier, what is going on? Why is the outcast with you? The return Raven walking back toward the pack grounds felt surreal. I felt a mixture of emotions, anger, anticipation, and something close to relief. My heart thudded with an ache I couldn't shake, and the sight of the pack house stirred memories of a home that had almost been taken from me. Beside me, Alpha Xavier walked with determination. The murmurs of pack members drifted as they spotted us. Their wide-eyed stares grew as we approached, and disbelief and curiosity painted their faces. But I kept my head high, meeting each gaze without flinching. Elder Malik stepped out and met us, confused. Alpha Xavier, what is going on? Why is the outcast with you? I almost wanted to yell at him for calling the return me an outcast, but I understood. Instead of explaining, Alpha Xavier ordered us to gather inside the council room. As we stepped inside, a heavy silence settled. Every elder was present and their expressions varied from suspicion to shock. Alpha Xavier, Elder Malik spoke again. What is the meaning of this? Her presence here is necessary, Alpha Xavier cut in, his voice firm. It's time for the truth to come out. We were wrong to cast Raven out. We were misled by lies and manipulation. There were murmurs as the elders exchanged glances. Some of them narrowed their eyes like they wanted to kill me. One of them was Elder Yasmin, who asked, what lies are you referring to, Alpha? We made decisions because of the solid evidence presented to us. Ilara, the return head healer, herself verified Celeste's pregnancy. Alpha Xavier didn't waver and turned to Ilara. She stood near the back, almost shrinking. Ilara, come forward and tell the council what you told me about Celeste's so-called pregnancy, he commanded. Ilara looked between the council and me. Guilt was etched all over her face. She lowered her head and spoke with a voice barely audible. The test, it was tampered. Celeste asked me to alter the results. She knew the herbs she'd been taking would mimic pregnancy symptoms, but she wanted to make sure the council believed her. Elder Malik was filled with disgust as he darted between Ilara and Alpha Xavier. You re-saying Celeste's pregnancy was fabricated? The return Ilara nodded, her voice trembling. Yes, Elder Malik. She threatened to ruin my family if I didn't comply. I should have come forward sooner, but I feared what she would do. Disbelief showed across the council members' faces and rage erupted. Elder Yasmin went from being cold to feeling that she was betrayed. And what of Raven's accusations? Elder Malik asked with a sharp tone. Did she know of this deception? Yes, Alpha Xavier replied. She tried to expose Celeste, but we ignored her. I ignored her. I let my desire for an heir cloud my judgment, and because of that, I failed this pack. Raven paid the price for my mistakes. Everyone went silent with Alpha Xavier's admission. Initially, no one seemed to accept that they had made a mistake. The return finally, Elder Yasmin cleared her throat and looked at me. You were right to question Celeste, Luna Raven. The councils were supposed to be the wise of this pack, but we let ourselves be deceived. Her voice softened, but regret was evident on her face. We misjudged you. And I am sorry. I forced myself to meet her gaze, despite feeling the hurt of what they had done. You cast me out right away. I stood by Alpha Xavier for years, fought for this pack, and you discarded me the moment someone claimed to offer an heir. Elder Malik bowed his head slightly, acknowledging the truth. We owe you an apology, Luna Raven. We judged and wronged you. But words won't be enough, I continued, my tone firm. If I am to return as Luna, I expect full the return transparency. I will not stand by and be betrayed again. The council members nodded, chastened, and then Elder Yasmin's eyes turned to Alpha Xavier, who stood silently by my side. Alpha Xavier, you understand the consequences of your admission, she asked. Such a confession will shake the pack's faith in you. Alpha Xavier's gaze didn't waver. I am prepared to take full responsibility for my actions. I failed as alpha and as a mate, but I will spend every day earning back your and Raven's trust. I just need you to give me a chance to prove that I am still a good leader." The elders looked at each other, waited for complaints from the pack members, and nodded the return. "Then let it be known that Raven is reinstated as our Luna, and Celeste will be banned from stepping foot within our territory again," Elder Malik declared. Alpha Xavier and I exchanged glances, his hand brushing against mine and grounding me. My heart, however, felt torn. Yes, I had been reinstated as Luna, but the wounds from the betrayal and exile still throbbed. When the council finally left, the room grew quiet. I turned to Xavier. He looked exhausted, but there was somehow relief in his eyes. "Thank you," I said softly. "Raven, I should have trusted you from the beginning. I am so sorry that I didn't. I know words are not enough to ease the pain I caused. But from now on, I'll spend every day proving I'm worthy of your forgiveness." I looked at him and studied him for the return moment. Alpha Xavier looked again like the man I fell in love with the day we realized we were mates. And I think someday, I could fully trust him again. "Alpha Xavier, this is your last chance. If you doubt me again, there won't be forgiveness, no second chances." He met my gaze and firmly said, "I understand. I swear I won't disappoint you this time." For the first time in weeks, a sense of peace filled the space between us. Together, we stepped out of the room, side by side, ready to rebuild the trust that had once been shattered. The end. My Alpha Series May Alpha Series 3 Liana. A week before the mating ceremony, I found a small velvet box on my bed. My heart fluttered and my lips curved into a smile when I opened it. Inside was a gold ring engraved with the cursive Leah. It was a name. Axel, my mate and future Alpha of Greyland Pack, called me after our first meeting. Axel and I had been inseparable after finding out that we were mates. We couldn't wait for the mating ceremony to be eternally bonded. I closed my eyes, put the ring on my finger, and imagined Axel placing it while reciting his vows. My heart soared with joy, and I giggled, but my ringing phone interrupted my imagination. It was Axel. I immediately picked up, expecting to hear something sweet. Instead, his voice was slurred, drunken, and heavy. "My Alpha Series 3, Leah, you gotta come get me. The run. We went too far." My stomach sank. Axel was drunk again. Tonight, he had his bachelor's party. He celebrated it with his closest friends, all males. The tradition was to drink and run wild as a final run of singlehood, but it looked like they had drunk more than run. Irritated, I hurriedly grabbed my jacket and car keys. Axel loved to drink, and this was not the first time he overindulged. But I couldn't get angry because we were close to getting mated and living together. When I arrived at the forest clearing where they had been running, I rushed to find Axel. But I froze when I spotted him. Axel was standing not with his closest friends, but beside the only woman in the party. They were so close to each other and holding hands. Then, I heard him murmur with a soft and affectionate voice into her ears, "Leah, I knew you'd come. You had never stopped my Alpha Series 3 caring for me." I blinked with confusion. "Leah? Wasn't I Leah?" My heart started pounding and raced when the moonlight struck the woman's fingers. She was wearing a gold ring exactly like mine. "Axel." My voice trembled as I walked toward him. "What is this?" He barely looked at me. He looked like he didn't hear me at all. Axel was lost and fixated on the woman beside him. Then, his eyes darted from me and the other woman. "Leah, why are there two of you?" Axel asked, looking confused. The imposter smiled with her eyes, gleaming with amusement. She was tall with flowing brunette hair, an hourglass body, and an angelic face. But her lips smirked like a devil enjoying what was happening. "Axel, you're drunk," she said softly with my Alpha Series 3 slight mockery as she turned to me. "Looks like you brought the wrong Leah to the party." My chest tightened, my mind reeling as I stared at her. Who was she? Why was she acting like he belonged to her? "Liana," a friend interrupted as he approached me. He looked nervous and unsure. "Axel just had a lot of drinks. He doesn't even know what he is doing. I think you should take him home." "Who is she?" I asked, my voice barely whispering while still looking at the woman smiling and flirting with Axel. The woman rolled her eyes and chuckled, making my blood boil. "Oh, don't worry, Liana," she said with a wide smile. "I'm pretty sure I was born and named Leah. I'm the real Leah. Aren't I, Axel?" Axel swayed, blinking at her and then at me. He smiled while saying, "Yeah. You're my Leah, me Alpha Series 3. My heart broke into 1,000 pieces. My hands trembled as I looked at the ring I received 2 hours ago. I thought it was a symbol of his love for me, but now it meant nothing. "What the hell is going on, Axel? Explain, now," I demanded with a shaky voice. But before he could respond, the woman removed the ring on her finger. She tossed it at me with a smirk. Here, it doesn't matter if I handed it to you. He'll just give it back to me anyway, she said. My hands shook as I caught the ring. I looked at Axel, praying he would say something that would make sense to all of this. But instead, his eyes furrowed and darkened. Give it back. It's hers. It's for my Leah. Axel growled like an animal protecting its cubs. I felt like an intruder and an imposter. It punched me into my gut and I stepped my Alpha Series 3 back. My chest tightened and I almost couldn't breathe. Axel, what are you saying? I asked, almost pleading with him to make me feel alright. Axel moved forward, reaching toward me. He was slow and swaying, but looked so dangerously furious. He grabbed my wrist and gripped it so hard it hurt. Give her the ring. Don't make me say it twice, Axel yelled. Tears blurred my vision as the realization that he was no longer the man I loved hit me. I slowly unclenched my fist and let the ring fall. Axel hurriedly picked it up and dropped to one knee in front of the other Leah. Leah, will you be mine? He said softly, full of love. My world shattered at the sight of Axel proposing to another woman. I couldn't take it anymore, so I ran. Simultaneously, Axel fell face first and hit his head on Themi Alpha Series 3 ground with a loud thud. He passed out before the other woman could even answer. Everybody gasped with worry and tried to help him to stand. But he was so wasted that he snored and couldn't wake up. Liana, his friend called at me as I ran towards my car. I didn't look back, ignoring his call. I didn't care what happened to Axel. All I wanted now was to be away from all of them. I needed to breathe, to think, and to cry. How could Axel propose to another woman named Leah? I muttered, hoping to calm me down, while I let out a loud cry. My hands gripped the steering wheel as I drove under pressure. My tears hadn't stopped as I tried to digest everything that happened. How could Axel propose to another woman named Leah? Axel was drunk. That was the only explanation I could find. He didn't know what he was doing. He probably didn't even recognize me. It was a case of mistaken identity. But the way he looked at her, the gold ring on her finger, and the softness of his voice when he spoke to her wouldn't leave my mind. I pulled into the driveway of the pack house, vision still blurred. Axel was in the back seat and passed out. His friends begged me to take him home. I got out of the car and dragged his tall and athletic body into the house. I almost stumbled when I dropped him onto the couch. How long have you been cheating? I whispered while staring at him. Just hours ago, I was sure Axel was the one for me. Now, I wasn't sure anymore. Suddenly, Axel's phone vibrated. I hesitated at first to pick it up because I trusted him so much that I never checked his phone. But I wanted answers, so I picked up the phone and unlocked it. A message flashed on the screen, and it was from her. The text message was simple but enough to shatter the hope that I had left. Don't worry about tonight, love. I'll see you tomorrow. I stared at the message, my hands shaking. Tomorrow we were supposed to choose my wedding dress. Axel promised to help me decide what to wear. Before I could wrap my head around the message, another one came. Make sure you clean him up before you sleep. My eyes widened. She knew I would be checking Axel's phone but wasn't bothered. She even advised what to do with him. Curiosity got the better of me, and I scrolled and read every conversation they had. They had been seeing each other behind my back for months. And she had been waiting for Axel to choose her. A third message came. He'll never leave me. You read, just a distraction. With that, I threw the phone. It bounced from the sofa before gently landing on the floor. So many questions formed in my head, making me doubt whether I should proceed with the mating ceremony. Axel didn't even wake up by the sound. He slept like a dead. I couldn't sleep well, so when the phone rang the next day, I heard it. It still works, I whispered as I heard Axel answer with a raspy and low voice. I'm so sorry, Leah. Please don't cry. You know it breaks my heart hearing you cry. I know this must be hard for you. But rest 41 assured that my heart belongs to you. It's just our mating ceremony had already been set. I can't back out now. I don't want to shame my father because he is our alpha. And I needed to take care of her. That is the least I could do to repay her for saving my life. Memories flashed back when I saved Axel from drowning 10 months ago. He was escaping from a rogue attack but fell from a deep river. It was when we discovered that we were mates. So this is what it's all about, I softly said in tears. I stood and decided to confront Axel of the truth. I would cancel the mating ceremony if he said he didn't love me. Axel was shocked when I came out and stood before him. He abruptly ended the call with Leah. Liana, did I wake you up? I'm sorry, love. There was an emergency I needed to attend to. He lied. Who was Leah? Why were you with her? How long have you been seeing each other? Is she your mate? Did you plan to mate me and ditch me later? I asked right away. Whoa, slow down. What's with all these questions? Look, I was so drunk last night, I barely remember what I had been doing. Leah was a friend that I hadn't seen for a long time. She just came back, so I invited her to our wedding. She used to work with models, so she will be there at the boutique to help us choose your wedding dress. I asked for her help. Now, relax, have breakfast, and I will see you later. I really need to go to take care of some emergency. I'm sure you did, I thought, but didn't say a word. Axel rushed to take a shower and left. I was left deciding whether to go to that boutique or just run away and never look back. But I went to the boutique an hour late. Why were you late? Leah had chosen a dress, and I believe it really suits your body, Axel said, eyeing a long, plain chiffon white dress. She will attend the mating ceremony as one of the bridesmaids. I remember one backed out. I looked at Leah, who smiled with malice. She was wearing a white halter dress that hugged her hourglass body with diamonds all around it. She planned to make me look like the ugly duckling during the mating ceremony. The dress she had chosen for me was nothing compared to the dress I selected for the other bridesmaids. It looked dull, lacking life, and hid all my beautiful features. Oh, okay, I said plainly. Aren't you going to try? Axel asked in surprise. Number 2. You said she worked with models, so I think she knew what's best more than me. Now, excuse me, I needed to do something important, I replied, turning me back to them, and walked towards the door without looking back. Before I started driving, I booked a flight to London tonight. I would be going home to pack my luggage. I decided that I would not show up during the mating ceremony. As predicted, Axel made an excuse as to why he couldn't come home tonight. He said there was a sudden rogue attack that he needed to take care of. It made me chuckle when I read his text, but I was glad because it allowed me to pack my luggage without destruction, and I left the house unnoticed. I took a taxi to the airport and left my car. On the way, the storm was brewing and the rain was pouring, but it was nothing compared to the chaos in my heart. The memory of Axel proposing to another woman kept replaying in my head, making me angry and hurt. My phone inside my pocket buzzed, cutting my thoughts. Axel's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated for a moment but decided to answer it. Liana, his voice was tight and strained. Where are you? You were supposed to be at the pack house hours ago. The guests are all here waiting, we're not doing this. The mating ceremony is off, I interrupted, my voice cold and emotionless. There was silence on the other end, and I could almost hear Axel sigh and process his words. What are you talking about? You can't be serious. Liana, this is the mating ceremony we are talking about. We have been waiting and preparing for this for months. The entire pack is, Axel, you proposed to someone else. You chose her, not me, I snapped. Silence once again. But when Axel came back, he spoke calmer and quieter this time. Liana, I know what you saw, but you're not thinking clearly. I was drunk, and like any drunk person, I did things without thinking. It was nothing. This I sensed something you just threw away at the pit of your annoyance. I laughed, and I could feel Axel gritting his teeth out of anger. You were sober to me when you proposed to her. You have been talking and seeing her for months now. You even left me to go to her the next day it happened. What more do I need to know? Axel hesitated as if searching for the right words. Liana, it's complicated. You don't understand the whole situation. I understand perfectly. You don't want me. Fine. I'm not going back. Liana, please, Axel pleaded, but I cut him off. It's over, Axel. Don't call me again. I hung up, shoving the phone back into my pocket. The rain poured louder than earlier, and the weight of what had happened crashed down on me. Tears fell from my eyes and my chest tightened. I wiped my tears and took a deep breath. I pulled myself together just in time for the airport to come into view. The driver was now heading to the international departure drop-off. I had just taken my luggage from the taxi when I heard a voice. Liana. I froze and my heart skipped. It was a familiar voice from someone I hadn't seen in years. I slowly turned to find Aiden King, alpha of the Blood Moon Pack and my 9th grade classmate. His dark blonde hair got plastered to his forehead from the rain, and his eyes filled with concern. I thought you were going to have a mating ceremony. Why are you here? Aiden said with a deep, low voice filled with curiosity. I needed to clear my head. I couldn't stay at the pack house, I replied with a whisper voice. Aiden studied me for a moment, then slowly nodded and said, I also heard what happened at Axel's bachelor's party. News traveled so fast. By now, everyone would know that Axel had chosen Leah over me, and our mating ceremony was a lie. I don't want to talk about it, I said and dragged my luggage to head inside the airport. Axel took a step closer, his gaze not leaving mine. Liana, Axel made a mistake. He doesn't know what he's doing. I shook my head and held back my tears. He proposed to her, Aiden. He put a ring on her finger. Aiden's jaw tightened. I thought he would say something that would make it all better. But instead, he just sighed. Understood. If you need to leave, let's go inside. He was the first person who didn't really stop me and saw my pain. Everyone was stuck with the excuse that Axel was just drunk and made a mistake. We went inside without speaking and immediately went to our respective counters. We didn't ask each other where we were going. We just checked in our baggage and took our boarding pass. Once done, we went to a small cafe and waited for our boarding. I don't know what I'm going to do. Everything I thought I knew is gone, I admitted with a shaky voice while sipping my tea. Aiden reached out and gently touched my arm. I know you're stronger than this, Liana. Don't let him take that away from you. I am sure you will figure things out. He smiled at me, and his words warmed my heart. It eased the doubts that I was feeling about my decision. Then, my phone vibrated, and it was one of the council members of the pack. I wasn't surprised by the call. Ms. Liana, if you can't come to the mating ceremony for some reason, I think it's best to postpone it. Axel also disappeared and is nowhere to be found. The entire pack and some guests are getting irritated from waiting. It's disrespectful to everyone. And the council members were left to deal with the situation, she said, annoyed. I'm very sorry for the trouble. Axel didn't have the balls to say that the mating ceremony was cancelled, I said, and cut the call. I didn't want her to ask questions, because surely, she would just give excuses for Axel's behavior. Aiden was looking at me. I smiled and said, you know what, I think you are right. I deserved someone better. It had been 4 days since I arrived in London. My things were still inside the open luggage. I had not unpacked them. I still hadn't decided whether I would stay here or move. My mind was still bothered by what I had left behind. I went inside the coffee shop that I started to grow fond of. It was freezing outside, but the weather didn't do anything to my broken heart. I ordered my usual tea and sat near the window to read a book. My phone vibrated, and I didn't need to check who it was. Axel had been calling and messaging non-stop 2 days ago, but I didn't bother to answer any of them. I needed this time to think and find myself, away from the lies and the painful memories. I was already engrossed in the werewolf romance book I was reading when someone called Meliana. I stiffened at the sound of my name. I didn't need to turn to know it was Axel's voice. And when I did, I saw him at the doorway with clothes damped from the rain. His intense gaze locked on mine, and for a moment, neither of us moved. What are you doing here? I asked immediately. I came to find you, he said with a low voice while moving towards me. I clenched my fists under the table, annoyed that he'd managed to track me down. How did you even know I was in London? Axel shrugged, pulled the chair opposite me, and sat without asking for permission. It wasn't easy, but I wasn't going to stop until I found you. I raised an eyebrow, skeptical of what I heard. And why would you do that? I left for a reason, Axel. I needed to get away from you, from everything. I know, but you can't just disappear like that, Liana. People are worried. I went out of my mind looking for you, he replied with a gentle but firm voice. I only chuckled. I find it hard to believe what he was saying. See, when did you ever care, Axel? Since that's not fair, Liana, Axel said quickly and defensively. I was a mess these past 2 days. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. You know how much I love you. I scoffed and shook my head. You did a funny way of showing it then. I watched you propose to another woman, Axel. What part of that screams love to you? Axel winced, as though my words had physically hurt him. I was drunk, Liana. I didn't know what I was doing. How many times should I say sorry? I looked at him incredulously. That's the excuse everyone keeps using. He was drunk. He didn't mean it. Well, guess what, Axel? You still did it. You still looked her in the eyes and called her Leah, like you used to call me. Axel ran a hand through his damp hair and sighed. I know it looks bad, but I had been trying to reach you, to explain. I don't want to hear your explanation, I snapped, cutting him off. There's nothing you can say that will change what I saw. For a moment, Axel said nothing, his eyes searching mine for something that would soften my heart. But when he found none, he leaned back in his chair, and his expression hardened. What about you, Liana? He asked quietly. Axel paused and looked at me with pleading eyes, hoping it would change my mind. Is this really what you want? To leave everything behind and leave here in London? Are you really going to let one mistake change the beautiful future we both plan? I flinched and my heart raced as I tried to find answers. But the truth was, I didn't know. I hadn't figured out what I wanted. All I knew was that I no longer belonged to the Greyland pack and needed to leave. Maybe. I still don't know what I want. But I know I can't go back. I know I could no longer go back to you, I admitted with a shaky voice, trying so hard to control my tears. I had loved him, but it hurts to be betrayed and realize that Axel was not who I thought he was. Axel's face softened as he tried to plead even more. You don't have to go back right away. You can stay here for a month if you like to heal from my mistakes. But you don't have to end everything and shut everyone out. I sighed. I couldn't believe this guy was still negotiating when I had finally made up my mind. Do you still think that I am just upset and impulsive? That is why I am doing this. I'm saying I understand that you are hurt and you need to process your emotions. Sometimes pain could cloud anyone's judgment. I am not in a hurry to schedule the mating ceremony again. All I wanted is for you to make a wise decision and come back. Hearing him say those words made my blood boil. Axel didn't know me at all. I might have not vocalized how much I hated people who lied and cheated, but I certainly had shown through my loyalty and love for him. I can't anymore, Axel. Everything ends the moment I saw you that night. I could see through his eyes that Axel was furious and irritated. He didn't like to come here to beg. It was probably because of shame and ego that brought him here. But love and honesty never showed in his eyes. Well, I would give you a few days to decide. Get back to me with your decision before this week ends. But like I said, you are making the biggest mistake, Liana. Don't tell me next time that I didn't tell you. Then, Axel immediately stood and headed towards the door without looking back. 3 years have gone since I arrived in London. I have rebuilt my life and became the owner of a coffee shop located on a busy street in the downtown area. It was my sanctuary because it kept me busy and I enjoyed it. It had helped with my healing. Welcome. What can I get you today? I asked without looking up from the counter. It was routine for me to greet customers, but sometimes I couldn't look at them. When there was no response, I glanced up and almost held my breath. Axel stood in the doorway and clung to him was Leah. It was Leah who first noticed me, and as usual, she still wore that smug smile, making her look like a bitch. And I wondered why our paths crossed again. Liana, Axel said, his voice low and unsure. His eyes scanned the cafe as if he couldn't believe I was working there. I didn't think I'd find you here. My heartbeat raced, but I kept it cool, hoping they would not see how close I was to breaking. What would you like to drink? I asked with a smile. Leah's gaze flickered between me and Axel, so she spoke first to break the pause. She still had that flirty and sweet voice when she spoke, but I knew how sarcastic she was when she talked to me. It's been a while. We wondered where you disappeared when Axel didn't hear from you. Looks like you've been busy. I thought I had moved on, but now I realize how suppressed my anger and bitterness were. Seeing Axel and Leah together had resurfaced it and opened the wounds I thought were already healed. Suddenly, Axel looked awkward, but his hand was still entwined with Leah's. However, his eyes were fixated on me, making me so uncomfortable. You've done well for yourself. The cafe it's nice, Axel said softly. Thanks, I responded curtly, keeping my emotions in check. Now, if you're not ordering anything, I have other customers to serve. Axel immediately let go of Leah's hand and hesitantly moved to reach for me. Liana, wait. You don't need to explain anything, Axel. I cut him off, keeping my eyes on the register, hoping it would mask the pain that I was feeling. That's all in the past now. I was wrong. Back then, I didn't know what I had with you. I've been thinking about it ever since. We were good together, Liana. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Andres Pond, that was a long time ago. I've moved on. You should too. Leah's smirk widened as if she enjoyed seeing Axel's desperate attempt at redemption. Funny how things turn out, don't they? But some things were just meant to be, I guess, she said, her eyes gleaming with amusement. I could feel the tension between us rising, and I struggled not to scream at her to leave. Good thing Aiden emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands with a towel, and almost froze when he saw the two. You all right? Aiden asked, looking at me with concern. I'm fine, I replied and turned to him with a smile. Aiden had been my rock these past 2 years. He had always been there, supportive and gentle in ways I never expected him to be. It was never the case with Axel. Axel's gaze hardened as he looked at me and Aiden. You and him, he asked, almost about to laugh in disbelief. Aiden stepped forward, his arm around my waist, and answered him calmly and with a smile. Yeah, we together. Axel's eyes widened as he got taken aback. He turned to look at me with eyes that I thought I would never see regret. He must have thought that I would never find another alpha to replace him. But what he said after shook me. You know, Liana, I waited for you to call. Surely, I made a mistake, but I had never stopped loving you. We can still fix this. You don't belong with him. My chest tightened, but I didn't let his words get to my weak heart. It's too late, Axel. You made your choice the night you proposed to her, I replied with a low voice. Leah felt embarrassed with Axel but tried so hard not to show it. She narrowed her eyes and gripped Axel's arm to remind him of her presence. But Axel ignored her and never left my gaze. We were mates, Liana. We are destined to be together. You know that. I had to draw the line between us and speak firmly. No, Axel, you broke the bond. Now you have to live with it. Before Axel could respond, Aiden rubbed my back, looked at me, and signaled me to go to the kitchen. I think it's time for you both to leave, Aiden said, towering Axel. Aiden's authoritative voice and height made no room for argument. Axel's shoulder sagged, and he let Leah tug him towards the door. But he looked at me one last time before the door shut behind them. As soon as they were gone, I was finally able to exhale. The encounter weighed so heavily on my chest that it almost hurt. Aiden looked at me and asked, "Are you sure you're okay?" "I'm fine. I just wasn't expecting to see Axel again. I thought I never would," I replied. Aiden let out a warm and reassuring smile. "You know I am here for you. You don't have to face him alone." I nodded, grateful for his presence. But even as I embraced Aiden, a part of me felt Axel and I weren't over. As much as I would like to close that chapter of my life, it still haunted me like an unfinished business. I thought of what Axel said earlier and wondered if he meant it. Did he say those words because he felt the same way I do? The night was eerily quiet and my footsteps echoed as I raced down the dimly lit street. I instantly felt like someone was following me. I glanced over my shoulder and saw a shadow moving fast, but I couldn't identify it. Panic started and the adrenaline to protect myself kicked in. I turned into an alley, hoping to lose him, but he caught up and his hand yanked me back. He slammed me against the brick wall, causing my arm to hurt. He gripped my throat and I struggled to break free from it. "Let me go," I choked out, but he only sneered and tightened his grip. The world began to blur and darkness crept in. My head spun, but my hands tried to claw him. Suddenly, the pressure on my throat released, and I collapsed to the ground gasping for air. I heard a loud scuffle and a sickening thud, and when I looked up, I saw Axel ripping a rogue's heart. "Axel," I croaked, still struggling to catch my breath. "Are you okay, Leah?" he demanded with eyes raging in fury. I nodded weakly and pushed myself into a sitting position. My hands trembled, but I managed to wipe away my tears. Hearing Axel call me Leah made me remember how much I adored that name, but hated it when I realized there was another Leah. And she was, by birth, really named Leah. "I'm fine," I whispered, even if I didn't sound convincing. Axel moved closer and his eyes scanned me from head to toe, checking for any injuries. His eyes grew angrier when he saw the bruise on my neck. "He hurt you?" I shook my head and said, "No, I'm okay. Just shaken up." "Shaken up," he repeated with almost a growl. "Leah, he could have killed you." A shiver ran down my spine because of his intense anger. His possessive and protective side took over, something I hadn't seen for a long time. It scared me, but also it made me feel that he still cared. "Why are you even here? Shouldn't you be with her?" He flinched, and for a second, I thought I saw regret in his face. But it quickly went away and was replaced with indifference. I heard a commotion and came to check. "I didn't know it was you." Despite being with Leah, Axel was an alpha, and when he felt like someone needed help, he would help. It was one thing I liked about him, but I needed to erase that thought and swallow the lump in my throat. "Thank you, but I am fine. You can leave now," I dismissed Axel. "Leah, I thought I would lose you for good earlier," Axel said with tears from his eyes. My heart broke and I felt like crying and hugging him. During the years I had been with Axel, not once did I ever see him cry. And I couldn't deny that it was making me weak inside. But this was not the moment to just give in to him. I needed to focus. My hands were still trembling when I took out my phone from my pocket, but I managed to call the police and requested an ambulance. My voice was shaky, but I was able to deliver the words correctly and the operator understood me. Then, I felt pressure on my left wrist. Axel held it with pressure enough to control the bleeding but not to hurt me. It was both comforting and unsettling. I saw the blood dripping from my wrist and felt the sting that radiated. It was only at that moment that I noticed that the rogue's claw cut my wrists so deep that I was bleeding a lot. And for some reason, it was healing really slow than usual. "Leah, you really need help. You are losing a lot of blood," Axel said. I usually heal slowly, but I requested an ambulance already," I responded with a stuttered voice. Axel's grip was not enough to control the bleeding. If he gripped me tighter, then he would be hurting me. He took off his t-shirt and tied it tightly to my wrist. "Does it hurt?" "I'm sorry, Leah, we need to control the bleeding," he said with worry shown all over his face. I just nodded at him. Axel had never been this warm and caring. I was not used to him like this. and then came the sound of sirens drawing close to our direction. The police and the ambulance arrived at the same time. A police officer and 2 medics immediately rushed to us. "Please, she is bleeding a lot," Axel pleaded. The medics immediately examined my wrists. One said, "She is healing so slowly. This must be stitched. Let's get her inside the ambulance. I'll come with you." I needed to ensure Leah would be fine. The medics took me inside the ambulance and did some first aid on my wrist. The police took the dead rogue and talked to Axel for a minute to find out what happened. Rogues these days are getting bold. "Anyway, thank you, Alpha Axel," the police said and waved goodbye. Axel went inside the ambulance. He looked at me with worry but didn't say a word. It felt uncomfortable to be with him in such a situation, but what choice do I have? I remained quiet and let the medics do their job of monitoring me and checking my cut to prevent me from losing more blood. As soon as we arrived at the hospital, Axel whispered in my ears, "Leah, I know there was a misunderstanding between us that hurt you so much. But tonight, I almost lost you for good, and I don't want it to happen again. Please forgive me and give me another chance." My eyes widened, but before I could even respond, the medics immediately rushed me to the emergency room, and Axel was left outside to wait. Axel went inside after the doctor stitched my wrist. I remembered his words, and they bore down on me and thickened the air between us. His eyes locked onto mine, still with worry, desperation, and regret. And I couldn't understand what I was feeling. Some of me understood him and wanted to forgive and take him back, but there was also a part that did not. "How are you feeling?" Axel broke the silence. "I'm okay," I replied with a smile. There was silence once again as we headed outside. I got discharged and thought of telling Axel I would take a cab home. But before I could speak, Axel said, "There's nothing between me and Leah. Please believe me. I wasn't lying to you about that. She was a childhood friend who left and came back. I've always looked after her, and when she returned, I guess that habit didn't outgrow me. But it has always been you. You're the one, my mate." I stood frozen with my heart hammering in my chest. My lips quivered as I tried to respond, but anger bubbled within me, making it hard to speak calmly. "Axel, you say there's nothing between you two," I began, my voice low and unsteady, "but does that include proposing to her when you were drunk? Does that not count because you couldn't think straight?" Axel's face went pale. He stared at me to search for the right words, but nothing came. The silence grew with truths that remained unspoken on his lips. And guilt covered his face. I clenched my fists when I didn't hear him respond, but I tried hard to stay calm. "You can't just dismiss that, Axel. You can't stand here and tell me it meant nothing, not after what I saw." His phone buzzed before he could even respond. I didn't have to look at his phone to find out who it was. It was only Leah, who would keep calling and needed him all the time. Axel reluctantly picked up the phone. He knew how irritated I was with it. "I'm busy, Leah. I can't deal with this right now," he snapped. Axel was about to hang up, but Leah hadn't stopped talking. "I know nothing about faucets. Leah, I am not a plumber. Go to the front desk or figure it out." "All right, I will be there soon." His irritation was evident and it surprised me. But he was seeing Leah later, which probably meant Axel was just trying to make me feel better. The ache in my chest deepened, but I didn't utter a word. Axel abruptly ended the call. His jaw clenched when he turned to look at me. I crossed my arms, my gaze hard and unwavering. "You don't have to explain anything. I've already made up my mind. We shouldn't see each other again," I said coldly. Axel's face contorted in disbelief and his eyes flashed with panic. "Liana, no. Don't say that. You can't just walk away from us." I looked at him sternly. "I can and I will. I'm getting mated soon to Aiden. And I don't want him to misunderstand any of this," I said firmly, despite feeling broken inside. Axel's eyes widened and he stood there, frozen for a moment. His mouth opened and closed, searching for the best words to convince me. But nothing came. Then, the elevator dinged and opened behind him. He turned and got torn between staying and leaving. And without a word, he walked inside the elevator. As the elevator doors closed behind him, I exhaled a shaky breath. A part of me wanted to chase after him, to explain that I never wanted us to end like this. But my head was telling me that I made the right choice. Just as I was about to pull myself together, the elevator opened again and Aiden appeared. His presence made me loosened some nerves and calmed me. His eyes softened with concern etched on his face. "Liana, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost," he said and rushed to wrap his arms around me. I leaned into his embrace and Aiden's embrace calmed my racing heart. "I'm fine," I whispered, though the words felt hollow. Aiden pulled back slightly, his brows furrowed in worry. "Liana, talk to me. What happened tonight?" "I received a call from the hospital also. I rushed to come here. It was a rogue attack, but don't worry. I only got a scratch, but you know I heal very slowly. God, Liana. I should have let you go home by yourself. Hey, I was the stubborn one who insisted on being alone. Don't blame yourself. Aiden studied me for a second, still concerned and worried. But what happened just now? I shook my head and smiled. Nothing. I thought I just saw someone. You know, I noticed you've been off since you saw Axel. I don't want you to feel like you recarrying this alone. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them away. I'm just tired, Aiden. That's all. He just nodded and brushed a stray hair from my face. All right, but if there's ever anything you need, you know I'm here, right? You can always talk to me. I nodded with a heart filled with gratitude. I know. Aiden kissed my forehead and I melted into his warmth, easing all the pain and tension tonight. As long as I had Aiden, everything would be okay. At least that's what I told myself. I finally saw the difference between the two. Axel's love was clouded with unresolved issues, entangled in complications and secrets. Aiden, on the other hand, was simple and unburdened, filled with genuine trust and care. His comfort was so sincere and unwavering, and he would even blame himself for not being there for me. And this was what I longed for my mate to be. Tonight reminded me of which arm I truly belonged. Axel turned like a ghost in my life, but that didn't stop him from showing up alone at the cafe every day. Every time he opened the door, the mate bond pulled me, and instantly, I knew it was him. I thought leaving and staying away from him would sever the bond, but the moment I saw him again, it awakened. Aiden had noticed the pattern before I did. One morning, Aiden stopped by to replace the flowers at the counter. He wrapped his arms around me and whispered, "You okay, Liana? He keeps coming here, huh?" I knew he deeply cared, but I couldn't bring myself to ask Axel to leave. To me, I needed to treat him like a patronized customer, and maybe it would give me closure. "I'm fine," I would always answer, but my heart screamed a different story. Axel's visits, though consistent, began to grow shorter. At first, I didn't notice, but as the days went by, his time in the cafe dwindled. He seemed more resigned, defeated even. There was a heaviness in his eyes every time he watched Aiden, and I exchanged small kisses, or when Aiden's hand rested on my back as he chatted with me at the counter. But no amount of regret in Axel's expression could undo the past. I had fallen for him so hard before, but after Leah, it was just shattered. The day before my mating ceremony with Aiden, I closed the cafe early to handle last-minute arrangements. As I turned the lock on the door, someone called me. "Liana." I froze. My fingers tightened around the keys and my pulse quickened. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Axel stood there with a drawn and pale face. He looked like he was at the edge of his life and lost his grip. "I'd thought you never come," I said without turning to face him. My voice was calm, but my heart was racing. "It's late. I know. But I needed to see you one last time," Axel said with a sad voice. I slowly turned and met his gaze. He looked broken and had lost his strong and confident aura. His shoulders slumped with dark circles in his eyes. And he was clutching a small velvet box. "I don't think this is a good idea, Axel. Tomorrow's my mating ceremony. You shouldn't be here," I said coldly. I can't let you go like this. You are my mate and we are meant to be together," he whispered, stepping closer with eyes pleading. "Liana, I made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. I let you walk away, and every day since I've regretted it. Please, just hear me out." I shook my head, already knowing where this conversation was headed. "It's too late now, Axel. You made your choice." "No," he said, more forcefully now. He opened the box, revealing the same ring he had once given me. "I was wrong, Liana. Leah was never, she wasn't, don't." I cut him off, my voice sharp. The memory of that night came flooding into my head. I couldn't forget Leah's smirk and how loving Axel proposed to her. "You chose her, Axel. Don't stand here and act like you didn't." His face contorted in pain. "I was drunk, Liana. I didn't know what I was doing. You have to believe me. It's always been you." I closed my eyes, trying to control myself, but anger exploded from hearing the same thing, and I had to repeat myself as well. Chapter S, you proposed to her. Right in front of me. How do you expect me to just forget that? I wasn't thinking clearly. I was lost and confused. "Please, Liana, you have to understand," he said, his voice trembling. "I understand perfectly. I understand that you decided to break our bond. You threw it all away for her, and now you want me to pretend like it didn't happen. I can't, Axel." Axel dropped to his knees, holding the ring out to me, his hands shaking. "Please, just give me one more chance. One last chance, and I promised I would make things better." Before I could respond, the door to the flower shop across the street opened and Aiden stepped out. His eyes widened in surprise when he saw us. But his presence gave me a reason and courage to step away from Axel. Aiden walked towards me, looked at me with a smile, and held my hand. He didn't even look at Axel when he spoke. "Everything okay here?" I nodded, though my heart was pounding. Axel, still on his knees, looked up with a mix of despair and disbelief. He slowly rose to his feet but still looked at me. "Liana," Axel whispered, his voice barely audible. "Don't do this. Don't throw us away." I squeezed Aiden's hand, grounding myself in the warmth of his touch. "I didn't throw us away, Axel. You did, and I already have made my choice." Axel's face fell and his shoulders slumped. He took a step back with eyes filled with regret. And at that moment, I felt like it finally severed the mate bond. It stung, but it wasn't something I couldn't handle. His betrayal hurt so much that what I feel now is nothing comparable. But as Axel walked away, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. My love for him had become a memory, and finally, the closure I longed for happened. Aiden pulled me into his arms, and his warmth eased what I felt inside. "You okay?" he asked softly, his lips brushing against my hair. "Yeah, I am now," I whispered. As we walked home together, I couldn't help but wonder if Axel would ever truly let me go. But it didn't matter anymore. My future was with Aiden, and I am so excited and ready to start the next chapter of my life without Axel. Soft murmurs of the pack surrounded me as I stood in the clearing, waiting for the mating ceremony to start. Tonight, Aiden and I would solidify our bond, and I would officially become his mate. Everything was surreal. And at some point, I couldn't believe this was already happening. I know I should be focused on the ceremony and the future of Aiden and me. But my mind drifted back to Axel, especially when I spotted him among the guests. He was not invited, but why did he come? What did he plan to do? My hand tightened around Aiden's, reminding me of my choice. I had to stay grounded and focused on what was important. "You re-distracted," Aiden whispered in his deep soothing voice. He squeezed my hand gently because heck knew how bothered I was by Axel's presence. I could tell the tension in his body, but he never took it against me. Aiden understood and supported me. I shook my head and forced a smile. "I'm fine. Let's focus on tonight." But my stomach twisted, and I didn't sound convincing. How could my mind be somewhere else when the ceremony hadn't even started? It's unfair, but I couldn't help it. "Liana, if he is making you uncomfortable, I'll make him leave," Aiden said firmly. I tried to speak to reassure him, but no words came out of my mouth. And my attention was caught by Axel walking toward us. I tensed, and my heart pounded as he moved closer to us. Aiden stiffened, and his protective nature kicked in. "You've got to be kidding. He's not going to do this here," Aiden muttered in a low and controlled voice. He let go of me and stepped forward, positioning himself between Axel and me. I gently grabbed his arm and whispered, "It's okay. Let me handle it." No matter how unconvincing I sounded, Axel was my problem to take care of. And I could feel the eyes of the pack members and the councils confused and curious about what was happening. I would not let Aiden's name be brought to shame because of Axel. Axel was bold with his approach because he didn't care what people thought about him. He stopped a few feet away with his gaze fixated on me. He used to be a man full of confidence and power, but now, all I could see was just raw vulnerability. He shouldn't have come. It made me so uneasy I couldn't think straight. "Liana, I need to talk to you, please." His voice was hoarse and almost stuttering. I swallowed hard, hoping it would help to keep my voice steady. "This isn't the time, Axel," I said coldly. "I know, but I can't let this happen without saying something. Please just hear me out." Aiden bristled beside me, ready to punch Axel to protect me. "You had your chance to talk to her. It's over. Leave," he demanded, but in a low voice. But Axel only ignored him, and his eyes never left mine. "I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you, and I can't take back what I did. But this ceremony, Liana, it can't happen. We are mates and the ones who are meant for each other. You know that." I felt a stab of a mixture of anger and deep sadness. Axel's words weren't new, and everyone knew Axel broke them. His +M betrayal still stings like hell, but tonight was not about him. It was for me and Aiden. And I had already moved on. "Axel, I can't keep repeating myself. You broke the bond when you made your choice. Now, I'm choosing Aiden. He is my second mate and I love him. This ceremony will proceed whether you like it or not," I said firmly, hoping it would make him stop. Axel looked like he was about to break down. His jaw tightened and his fists clenched as he fought to control himself. "You don't mean that. You can't." Aiden stepped forward with a low growl. "She does. And it's time for you to leave, Axel." They glared at each other. It was watching two alphas about to tear each other apart. No one would back down unless I did something. "Aiden, please," I murmured, touched his arm, and turned to Axel. "You need to go. I'm not yours anymore. Axel's face was drained with blood and he nodded in defeat. He stepped back and his gaze lingered on me for a moment before walking away. I thought he would leave, but he stood on a further corner to continue watching the ceremony. I let out a breath. My entire body was trembling. Axel was still there, but I knew he had accepted the situation already. He was filled with regret because nothing he would say or do would change my mind. Aiden's arms wrapped around me, pulling me close, and I rested my head against his chest. I've got you, Liana. You re-safe, Aiden whispered. His voice soothed the chaos inside me, making me relax. I know, I whispered back, though my heart ached for sympathy for Axel. We stood there for a moment, just the two of us, surrounded by all the pack members and councils. One of the councils looked at Aiden, asking if we could start, but I needed a second to collect myself and focus on my choice. Are you ready? Aiden asked gently, his lips brushing against my forehead. I nodded and smiled. I am. The ceremony started without any distraction, and when I was done reciting my vows, I caught a glimpse of Axel. He was crying but trying so hard not to make a sound. I felt pity for him, but my heart was already sure of Aiden. He did have a chance, and he made a choice. Watching me getting mated to another alpha was a reminder that every action has consequences, and some would lead to a lifetime of regret. Axel, I stood hidden among the trees, watching Liana and Aiden exchange vows. My chest tightened with every word Liana uttered for him. Those words should have been for me. Liana looked radiantly beautiful in the moonlight, and love filled her eyes. But that love was now for Aiden, the alpha she had chosen after I ruined everything. I watched silently even though every part of me was screaming to stop it. But I couldn't. I tried several times to convince Liana, but nothing worked. She had made up her mind, and this was my punishment. The pack surrounding them seemed happy and fully approved of their mating ceremony. My heart twisted, and my wolf wanted to take over and rip Aiden apart. He refused to give Liana away, but she was no longer mine. I had thrown her away when I let Leah back into my life. As Aiden slid a ring on Liana's finger, I felt something shattered inside. My wolf howled in agony, fighting to break free, but I held him back. He couldn't make a scene now. It was already too late. The cheers from the pack echoed through the clearing, but all I could hear was my heart breaking. I couldn't take it anymore, and I ran away. I wiped my tears despite the tightness in my chest, causing my breathing to go ragged. I pushed through the underbrush until I reached the edge of the woods, where the hotel where Leah and I were staying came into view. I didn't want to return to our room and face her smug face, but there was nowhere else to go. As I walked inside, I found Leah sitting on the bed with her arms crossed, and her eyes burning with anger. You went to the mating ceremony, didn't you? She spat, her voice sharp. I didn't respond, but my silence was enough for confirmation. Leah stood with eyes narrowed on me, but I didn't meet her gaze. You pathetic Axel. She doesn't want you anymore. No one does. And so, why waste your time attending that ceremony? Her words were like a punch in the gut. Normally, I would lose my shit and yell, but I was just so exhausted. And she wasn't wrong anyway. I am paying the price of what I did to Liana. Leah, just stop, I muttered, rubbing my temples. I felt like my head would explode, and I didn't want to hear her yelling. I had enough pain today. But she didn't stop because Leah loved to nag and be in control. You think you can go crawling back to her? After everything you've done? Leah sneered, stepping closer. She's with Aiden now, and you stuck with me. Being stuck with her felt like daggers stabbing me over and over again. I could feel my wolf stirring inside, restless, ready to snap. But I forced myself to stay calm. Leah, not once did I ever care about you. Not before and certainly not now, I said quietly. Her face twisted with rage. How dare you? Enough. I snapped, cutting her off. I'm done with this. I'm done with you. I grabbed my suitcase, went to the closet, and started shoving my clothes inside my suitcase. I couldn't stand Leah anymore. Her eyes glared, and she gritted her teeth as she watched me pack. You think you can just walk away? Who's going to want you, huh? Everyone knew you broke the bond with Liana for me. Your heart could only allow for her and me. Now, you don't have a choice but to stay with me. I kept packing, but my head was spinning with the thoughts of the life I lost and Liana. I could have peace, love, and everything if I had been wiser. Leah's voice became more frantic as she realized she couldn't stop me. God damn it, Axel. Could you please stop being pathetic? What are you going to do? Kidnap Liana? You'll never have her again. You'll never have anyone. I zipped the suitcase and walked towards the door. But before I could reach it, I heard a loud shatter of a glass. Leah had grabbed a glass off the table and hurled it at the wall. It shattered into pieces like the remnants of my life. You not leaving me. You cannot. You nothing without me. You needed me, Axel, she screamed. I paused as my hand reached for the door handle. For a moment, I felt pity for her, for both of us. But it was fleeting. I opened the door and walked out without a word. The cold air slapped me and brought me back to the present. I dragged my suitcase into the quiet street. I needed to look for a hotel for the night until I could decide where I would go next. I couldn't stay here if I didn't want to bother Liana anymore. She deserved to be happy, and I needed to heal and move forward. I crossed the road, my mind clouded with thoughts of Liana. What was she doing now? Was she happy? Did she even think about me? I was so lost in my thoughts that I didn't hear the car until it was too late. The screech of tires cut through the silence, and before I could react, the world exploded in pain. The impact sent me flying, and my body slammed against the cold and hard pavement. The suitcase flew out of my hand, and its contents scattered around. I lay there and gasped for breath as my vision went blurry. Pain shot through my body, but it was nothing compared to the agony in my chest. I wanted to scream, to rage against the moon goddess for taking everything from me. But all I could do was lie there, broken and defeated. As the darkness closed in around me, one thought echoed in my mind. I had lost everything, and there was no going back. The end.